This meeting of Monroe Township Board of Education is now in session. I'd like to ask everyone to please rise and join me in the pledge. Mrs. Kalapanowicz, thank you. Have the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mrs. Kalapanowicz. Very good. Okay, Ms. Gorski, we can have a roll call.
Certainly. Mrs. Arminio.
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella.
Here.
Mrs. DeMayo. Mrs. Kalapanowicz.
Here.
Mr. Nikitinsky.
Here.
Mr. Pelori.
Here.
Mr. Ryback.
Here.
Mrs. Siegel.
Here.
Mr. Tefano.
Here.
And Mr. Rutsky.
Here.
Mr. Board President, you have a quorum present this evening.
Thank you.
In
We have a statement.
In accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law, the Monroe Township Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted May 8th, 2020, in all schools, the Home News Tribune, the Cranberry Press, and filed with the clerk of the municipality.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes. I'll move to approve the minutes of the Public Board of Education meeting for March 18th, 2020. Do I have-
So moved.
Okay, Ken, I'm sorry.
Gurpreet has joined the meeting.
Mr. Ryback, that was you making a motion and Mr. Chiarella seconding?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, we can all vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll abstain.
Okay, Ms. Arminio abstained.
So
Any
noted.
recusals? Okay. Now we have a presentation, New Jersey Student Learning Assessment Science Results. Is that Dr. Albick?
Mr. Lehman.
Okay.
Dr. Lehman.
Mr. Washington, could you,
Lehman.
thank you. Could you share, let me share my screen, please? Working on pulling up a presentation.
Mr. President, this is Andy. If people are not speaking, if they can mute their microphones, that'll be helpful. We hear a lot of paper shuffling.
As I said that earlier, it would be helpful if you're not speaking to shut your microphones. Thank you. Okay, Dr. Lehman?
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Outstanding. So this is just a brief presentation of our NJSLA science results. Just about a year ago this week, we were taking our second go at the New Jersey Student Learning Standards test. We have, over the past few years, starting in 2016, adopted a new set of science standards and been transitioning to rewriting our curricula. So in 2016, we had full implementation. 2018, we gave our first go at this assessment. It was a field test year. This past year, which is the 2019 assessment, was our first operational test, is what they call it. They used this year's data to develop cut scores and basically see what a 2 years worth of data looks like. These test scores do not count towards accountability. As we know, this current year's test has been canceled. So we're really kind of in a gray area as to what our kind of data profile would look like as this test unfolds. We actually didn't think we were going to get results from this assessment because it was getting so late, and they kind of gave us preliminary information that we weren't going to get data back. And then as we started to gear up for remote learning, we ended up getting word that we were going to get some scores back on last year's test. So this is the scores. These are the scores, and I'll run you through them. We'll take a quick look. There's something that we will take a look at. We got them so late this year that they had no significant impact on us being able to adjust our instruction for if we had taken a test this spring. We would have had a matter of weeks to do any assessment and adjustments, but this is what it looks like, and then we will kind of proceed and introduce we get rolling with this assessment. Notable regarding this test, it's totally rewritten. So previous NJSLA or science assessments were pretty much straight up memorizing information and recalling information. Historically, the state and our district specifically did extremely well. We were pushing, oftentimes 90–95% of students passing the assessment. Statewide, the numbers were extremely high. When they adopted the new standards and created this assessment, they changed the way they asked the questions. So they're looking for much more application-based answers. They're no longer just straight up multiple choice. There's some technology-infused questions, as well as some constructive response questions. So I think, in the transition to that new assessment, they are seeing student performance kind of performing a lot differently than it has been in previous years, and you'll see that as we move forward. But basically, the test reflects a significant effort towards students performing and their higher order thinking skills. The science test is given in grades 5, 8, and 11. That's required. And basically what it does is it tests for the 5th grade test, it tests back the previous 3 years. The 8th grade test, it tests back the previous 3 years, but develops on that foundation from in 5th grade. And in the 11th grade test, again, the previous 3 years, but again, it develops, and those questions are dependent on that foundation developed from grades 3 through 8. So you'll see as our scores go through, we're in the continued rollout of these standards in this assessment. There are 4 levels of performance. In order to be considered passing, quote unquote, you'd be a level 3 or level 4. It means you're approaching expectations or meeting expectations. And when we present the data, it's gonna be in a bar chart, and you'll see all these colors kind of lined up. For this slide here, this is our grade 5. So what you're looking at is on the right-hand side for the district, the gray and the dark blue, those are that are meeting or exceeding expectations. As you can see, we're outperforming the state. That's no surprise. We regularly do that. We have an outstanding science program here. One thing notable for the elementary grades, as I said, this test is totally redone. And it's another focus of it is the kind of connection between multidisciplinary instruction. So at the elementary level, you have your primary instructor for science, also teaching, for the most part, language arts and social studies and math. So you have a student in the same class or maybe one other teacher, and they're infusing, like in language arts, you may be reading some science texts, some nonfiction texts, you may be making connections. And you can see that in the results here. It's a natural connection between some of the types of questions they're asking, and it really prepares the students to be able to answer these questions. In grade 8, again, you're looking to the right, so the gray and the dark blue, those would be our students meeting or exceeding. Again, we are up in the state, not a surprise as well. Something notable, I mean, you can see that we're approaching at the state level, 80% of students that took this assessment are not meeting the performance level. I think that is a point of reflection in terms of going back as a state and taking a look at, is this the right assessment? Are we asking the right questions? Are we measuring what we want to measure when 80% of the students that take the test are not actually passing? Just a point of thought for the future. And as we move into the high school, this is grade 11. Again, you're looking at the gray and the dark blue. We're not quite performing at the state level, and there's, again, a lot of variables that kind of go into this piece. The 11th graders, when we give the math and science test, it's an optional assessment. The science is not optional, but we could question as to whether, our students, are we actually seeing what their performance levels are, or do they have one foot out the door? And again, I spoke to, the further you get away from the elementary level, the more kind of independent your classes operate. And this test is designed to connect a lot of those things. So, as moving forward, as we see some of these test results in future years, it's something we can take a look at to see, can we strengthen some of those connections, even at the high school level, between the language arts department and the science department and the social studies department, to kind of try and bring all these things together, the engineering department. Some other information they provide us, and we will be digging into in the future, is our demographic data. We use this to focus on make sure all our students are receiving an equitable education. One of our growing populations is our English language learners population. Something that we will, continue to watch. And just because we have a 0 here doesn't necessarily mean no students were meeting or exceeding expectations. Oftentimes, a 0% means we did not meet the threshold in terms of the amount of students to be able to report out a percentage on that. But that's what we will use this demographic data to do. We'll take a look at males, females, different backgrounds, and we'll try and make sure our curriculum meets the needs of all of our students. And here's some 8th grade subgroup data, and we have similar data for the grade 11. And then concluding our presentation, we look at strengths and interventions. So one thing we always take pride in is our professional development. It's ongoing, it's on demand, it's whatever the teachers need to help them differentiate their instruction and meet the needs of their students. As we know, our student population varies every year. They come with different strengths and weaknesses. This year coming up will be no exception. As we come off of remote learning, hopefully, we're going to have students coming into the classroom with various expectations and various backgrounds and experiences from this remote learning time. And more than ever, we will be pre-assessing and figuring out what each student needs and trying to, whether it's remediate some of that instruction, weave it into what we moving forward. And our next steps, students at all grade levels of science are presented with authentic learning experiences that enhance the curriculum. And then that's the transition from our old standards to the new New Jersey Student Learning Standards of Science. It's all about application. It's all about phenomenon. It's all about bridging and making science a part of the whole experience, the whole life, and making connections to the world application.
Any questions for Dr. Lehman?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Mayo.
Why do the cut scores have to be changed every time they administer a new test? And what do they use to determine those cut scores?
So the cut scores, they change because they basically, specifically for this assessment, they started from scratch. They're building a new test question base. They've never given it before, like we could see. 80% of the state in grade 8 did not pass the test. I think that's grounds for going back and taking a look at if we had a teacher that taught and gave a test and 80% of the students did not pass, we'd challenge that teacher to really dive in and look at what we taught. Is it the questions I asked on the test? Do they not align with what I taught? Did I not teach the right thing? So when you develop a new test, the only way they get tested is when they actually give it out to all of our students. And I'd like to think there's a little bit of between both of those. Our students, as they learn in this new curriculum sequence and through these new standards, their base of information will kind of align with more what they're asking for in this test. But they also may go back and say, maybe some of these test questions weren't asked in the right way, or maybe they didn't address the needs of our learners in the state of New Jersey. But that's a long-ended answer to say they got to take a look at the math and the statistics to really figure out where those cut scores are. And for this, in this example, each grade level, grade 5, grade 8, grade 11, they have different numbers as their cut scores. When you look at science and math, they're all the same. Doesn't matter what grade you're in, the cut scores are the same. So I think that again tells you they're really trying to figure out what's going on in this assessment. And this year's not going to help us because we didn't give it. But as we move forward, I'm sure they'll start to tweak those numbers and play the statistics.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have a question?
Yes, Mr. President, if I may. Mr. Lehman, one of the things that I noticed between as we progress from 5th grade to the 8th grade to the 11th grade, I see that while the state averages sort of stayed consistent, our numbers seem to be on the higher end, level 3 and level 4, seem to have been reduced. Quite honestly, our grade level, grade 11, level 4 is 5.4%. Assuming that this is a sample that we're comparing apples to apples, why is that the case? Why are we not maintaining the advantage, or at least the scoring that we received in the 5th and 8th grades carry that through to the grade 11?
Yeah, good question. We'll dig in and kind of figure out and see if we can see one nice thing with this new assessment is they'll break it down into the 3 areas. We have earth science, life science, and physical science. Historically, they do not break down into those kind of genres. So we can take a look and see sequencing wise, is there something in one of those classes? Because our science curricula spirals. You know, you get a little life early, you get a little life in the middle school, and you take biology and things in the high school. So we can take a look at different tiers to see maybe there are gaps or something in there. I would think a lot of this has to do with, like what I spoke to a little bit earlier. The focus on this assessment is really multidisciplinary. And the further you get into the high school, and we have a tremendous high school program, and our students take electives that some students don't even have the opportunity to think about taking in their high schools, we really start to break apart and everything kind of works independent of each other. And I think this test brings it all together. So one of the things we can do, we can work on in the future, is trying to make connections between some of our, our sciences and our language arts courses, or our sciences and our social studies or engineering courses or something. So in doing that, we're looking for applications. So for example, one of the things in the physical science area, they talk about chemistry and things, they make connections in this assessment to cooking. So if you may have that kind of linear science vision of chemistry, but can you make that connection to cooking or baking? And that's the application piece. So those are the kind of connections we're going to have to start to focus on. And again, as we get more data and we go through these assessments over the next few years, we'll be able to kind of parse out where that is.
Dr. Lehman, I'm sorry, Mr. Fuller, are you finished? Okay, Dr. Lehman, I along those lines, I also was concerned about science in a grade 11. Obviously, you use that test to inform instruction, but we have to have our own ideas of improving those grades also. And is that some of the things you were just alluding to with making with real life type of situations like cooking and?
Yep, and that's what we take a look at. This is one kind of data point in a myriad of things we do. Our formative and summative assessments we give in real time. If you take a look at our AP scores, the same students that are taking all the AP classes, they're taking this NJSLA assessment. So that it's not that they don't have that science background. We just have to figure out where the connection is with this one assessment and why they performing the way they're performing.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, not seeing any.
Hello. Michelle and I both have a question.
Michelle, I could not see your hand, but now I see it. Okay.
Dr. Lehman, thank you. Do you agree with the state standards of education, and how are we implementing those? So let answer that first, and then I know that we've changed the test, or the state has changed the test. Is the purpose of the test to get a broad idea of what all the children are supposed to know? And do you think that this test is actually assessing that?
Are you asking science specific, the state standards?
The whole presentation, the test that all these tests.
The tests. I think we have the standards we have. They're developed by professionals and a combination of teachers and
When you say we, is it the district standards you're talking about, or the state?
No, these are state standards.
Okay, let's start with the state standards. Okay.
Yep. And our role in the district is to implement those standards. We can be a part of the development process, and our supervisors and all of us administratively, we offer to be a part of that process as much as we can. And then once the standards are developed and written, we implement, and we rewrite curricula as we need to. We tweak it, and again, the assessment development is not something that we're typically a part of. Again, they solicit, but a lot of this is done with Pearson and some private companies, and they're designing their tests to measure the standard. So our job is to teach to the standard, and they develop the test to the standard.
Okay, well, that's sort of my concern, because I know we had issues with Park, and we don't want to teach to the test. We want to have the children learn standard information, standard instruction. So it seems like we're vacillating. And again, I'm not an educator, so I'm relying on your input. I just think an overall rigorous education, the student should be able to pass most tests. So it concerns me that that either the standards are not explained properly or we don't understand what we need to do, but there's a general education, it seems to me, that we could provide that would implement the standards and then, of course, have a more rigorous, we want in Monroe to have better than standard education. I mean, the test, I mean, everybody, that assesses our performance and the test scores are important, but more important, I'd like us to develop intellectual and well-educated students. So that's my question. Is there a disconnect between what the standards are from the state and what we feel we're doing to educate our students? They have to go out into the world. They just don't have to pass a test that the state says they do. So I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, and I think we teach to our standards. We have to report at these meetings on the assessments that they require us to report out on, and that tends to be the focus in the newspapers of these one kind of assessments a year. We're gathering information on students daily. We have our.
I'm not worried about just teaching to the standards. That seems to be too narrow. Do we? My point is, we should just be concerned about. I mean, yes, you have to implement the standards because the kids have to take an assessment. But if we just worry about a broad educational rigor, that the standards will take care of themselves. So just worried about educating to the standards means I think that's my concern.
And I think by me saying we teach the standards, every course that we develop has some standards that we have to reach. And our program, K-12, allows our students to kind of choose their path. And if they're interested in something, they take one path. If they're interested in something else, they can choose to do another path. And then well-rounded piece also comes to, we talked a little curriculum committee today about the clubs and co-curriculars and all those opportunities. They kind of really bring everything together. We have our core gen ed education, with our graduation requirements and such, but then we round it out, especially in Monroe, we have opportunities for students to be engaged in everything from athletics to any kind of club you can imagine. So
yeah,
I think all together that brings us together.
Yeah, I guess I don't get that. And you talked about the tiers and we talked about tiers and moving. You'll give kids some instruction based on one of the standards in the younger grades, and then as they go to middle school and then high school, there doesn't seem to be like enough consistency to bring the subject matter, have the subject matter go in depth. You know what I mean? Like if you're teaching it in 5th grade, but they're not going to hear it again until 8th grade, and then they won't hear it again until 11th. I don't know that there's a consistency of, and you can tell me again, I'm not an educator, but this is what it sounds like. We're all over the place and we're not really.
Yeah, I think vertically we're really tight. I think it's called spiraling, and especially our math program, year to year, the skills spiral and they build on top of each other, which is why one of the things we talked about being in this remote learning environment, a lot of what we're doing and a lot of the instruction that we're going through right now, especially at the elementary level, the students are going to cycle back to it naturally next year. It's a spiraling piece. Similar thing with themes and concepts in social studies and science. So, as they go through, they cycle through and they touch on these topics again, and they do it at a different level of rigor. They do it with different types of activities. They get deeper and deeper and deeper because they're building their foundation in the elementary level. They're expanding on it in the middle school. And then at the high school, they can really kind of hyper-focus and choose, I want to dive deep into AP history. Do I want to take an honors bio instead and focus on social studies? So there's a lot of opportunities, and what we call it spiraling. K-12, whenever we look at curricula, we talk about departmental meetings. We do vertical articulation, which is K-12, and then we do horizontal, which is across a grade level. So to make sure no matter what grade what classroom you're in say 5th grade, horizontally you're getting consistent experience, and then vertically, as you move from K through up to grade 12, you have a consistent program as well.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Lehman, can I ask a question? After you take time to do the deep dive into what's going on with the grade 11 and why we didn't perform as well as we thought we had, can you revisit this with us and give us your interpretation of what happened? Or
Sure. And again, we got to take a look at this. It could be the assessment. It could be something else, something we have going on, but we'll report back.
does the state, after they review the assessment, come back to you and give you some insight too?
Nope.
No. They don't tell you that, 20% of the questions were more ambiguous than they had thought, and no.
What we know is this assessment isn't planned. There's no plan on counting this assessment towards any accountability piece until the spring of 2021. Basically what they did is they built in a few years of giving this test to really figure out where they need to be.
But they still have to evaluate it year to year to make it so they can tweak it and make it better.
Yep. I would expect this year's assessment, if we had taken it, would have looked a little different than it did this year.
Okay, so the key is to look at the next year's one and the year after to see how we've changed or improved or not improved.
Yep. And then the challenge is we didn't take it this year. They're going to bump their timeline back because they want another 2 years worth of sample before they have it count for anything.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Lehman? Shout it out if you have one. I can't see everybody. I'm only looking at about 5 board members. So, okay, not seeing it. Thank you, Dr. Lehman. Appreciate it. And now we have our referendum presentation. And let me just say that after the presentation, I'm going to open up questions and comments for board members. And then I will have the public come up for questions and comments, and that will be separate from the upcoming public forum. So I imagine it's Dr. Alvick?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Washington, can I share my screen?
Yes, ma'am. Stand by. Dr. Alvick, you should be good to go.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
No. I can't. Can anybody else? I can't see her screen. Can anybody else see?
Cannot see your screen.
Not yet.
Keep trying, Dory.
Okay.
Be under the share tab.
Yep, I hit share and share content. So I'm sharing my screen.
There you go.
Coming up.
There it is.
Okay. Promising.
Okay. All right, everybody can see it?
Yes.
Okay. So as the board knows, from January and February board meetings, the administration was tasked to taking a look at some options for a future referendum. Our goal was for a December referendum. In January, the ad hoc committee had made a presentation, their presentation was accepted to kind of look at a plan A. So the plan A you have there on the screen in front of you was to construct a new district-wide 5th, 6th grade school building on the driving range, to also include a small addition and renovation at the high school to create 13 classrooms and 3 small group instruction rooms. And in essence, this would remove 6th grade from the middle school. This would give us an increased capacity for our schools of 1,410 students. Now, I know that there's been some question about the high school addition. Remember, this was not a high school addition that was to provide for all of the students in the future. This was just something that was going to get us through for a while. So if you're looking at 13 classrooms and 3 small group instruction rooms, if you think about it a little differently than just the total capacity that it adds to our students, we actually get 104 class sections, full class sections, and 24 small group sections. We have 4 classes on A day, 4 classes on B day. That's a lot of extra classrooms that we could use for our students. So even though it would not meet the demands that are projected in our demographer study for the next 10 to 15 years, this would be a huge increase in our school at the high school. This would also pull 6th grade out of the middle school, giving us the room at the middle school to be able to not have the trailers at the middle school and be able to house the 7th and 8th grade there comfortably. And with this number, we would be able to redistrict our elementary schools to all be still stay sister schools, but K4 at the 6 elementary schools, 5, 6 in the middle, in the new upper elementary 5th and 6th grade building. So that was Plan A that was presented by the ad hoc committee. The cost for Plan A, and the board has been given this information. They were sent this information last night, and this presentation was actually shared out on the district website today. So everyone, the community, could see it ahead of time of this presentation. Now, Plan A, the cost for Plan A is $99,367,939. Now, this is for that new school building. It also includes, all of these estimates include a COVID-19 amount, which actually could possibly be taken out of this amount. So it's about $4 million that could possibly be removed from this amount, based on whatever outcome we have in this current health crisis. Now, the benefits of this plan is that it does build for 1,400 students. It moves all 5th and 6th grade students to one school. The current middle school would become a 7th, 8th grade building. It is the least costly project of the 3 projects that were researched. Now, the negatives of this plan are we would still have a need at the high school for additional room in the future. And we still would have to consider the renovation of Applegarth School, which we've talked a lot about, that we know that there's some needs in that building. And, you know, one of the negatives is that we have to redistrict for the elementary schools. We've been through that before. It's not an easy project to do. It's not always a popular project to move elementary schools and disrupt some of our elementary students, but it's something that we could do. So the occupancy for these new buildings, if they were approved, if this plan was approved this evening, and if we went for a December referendum and the referendum passed, the occupancy for these buildings with the construction for the high school addition would be in the summer of 2023. The new school would be summer of 2024. That's Plan A. Now, just for everyone's information, the high school, the additional rooms at the high school, the addition at the high school kind of includes 4 parts, and each part is different, a different type of construction depending on where the addition would be added. For example, there would be an additional music room over by the music end of the building. That would be modular construction. The back part of the gym where the existing weight room is would actually be something called a butler building, because they would not have to do a full construction. It's actually cheaper than the modular plan. And basically it would take that existing weight room and turn it into classrooms, and then we would have to add on another weight room. So, but again, it's a butler building, so it would be a better option there. The last piece of it would also be the overhang in the back of the building where the Falcon Nest preschool is. If the board members remember where we go in the back to have our Teacher of the Year dinner, it's back in that area. So there's already an overhang. So it's not possible to do a modular construction there because of the way that the building is already there. It would be under the overhang, but connected to the building. So that would actually be regular construction. And this also would include some renovations to the media center to create classrooms and 2 small group instruction rooms. Now that's the same high school addition that's on all 3 plans, but just so everyone has that information. A 5-6 building, the 5-6 building on the driving range would be for about 1,200 students, and it would be a multi-story building. So you have that information. A Plan B, which was presented, I think, at the February Board of Education meeting, is, again, that addition to the high school. But it's also looking at other buildings and seeing where we can add some additional space for our students. So it's actually constructing an academic pod addition at Brookside School. That academic pod, because of the size of it and a lot of the site work that would have to be done, that would be regular construction. At Barclay Brook, we would add 6 to 8 classrooms. Those would be modular classrooms. And then this would actually take care of the Applegarth School, because we would replace the Applegarth School with a new, about 1,000 student elementary school on the Applegarth site. Again, we would remove 6th grade out of the middle school. This plan actually gives us space for 1,904 students. Okay. The cost of Plan B is $115,703,454. Again, the benefits of this is we're housing 1,904 students, so it's a larger project than Plan A. It's replacing the aging Applegarth structure, which is a positive. Again, moving 6th grade into the elementary schools. The current middle school would become a 7th and 8th grade school, and it would leave the golf site for future needs in the district. The negatives here is that there's actually 4 construction projects going on at one time. We would still need, eventually, not right away, some additional room at the high school. There is a higher cost for this project, and we know that this is an economically stressful time. And again, one of the negatives is redistricting for the elementary schools, but that would be the same in all of the projects. Looking at the bottom there of the occupancy time, the high school, Barclay Brook and Brookside buildings would be ready to occupy the summer of 2023, and the new Applegarth School would be the summer of 2024. And again, that is dependent on passing a plan this evening, moving forward with a referendum, and passing a referendum in December. Plan C, which was it was something that the administration looked at after the resolution that was passed at the February board meeting to see if this was another option that we could use. This would again account for the addition at the high school, the academic pod addition at Brookside, the modular classroom addition at Barclay Brook. And then instead of one large building on Applegarth School, it would actually be 2 smaller buildings, 2 smaller elementary schools, one on the Applegarth site and one on the golf site. Again, this would account for 1,904 students. So this is a similar student size as Plan B. But again, you're adding another school addition, which is not ideal. And it's a much higher cost. So Plan C has a much higher cost, $146.7 million. The benefits, it's housing 1,904 students. It does also take 6th grade out of the middle school so that the current middle school becomes 7th and 8th grade. It does replace Applegarth School. The negatives are it's 5 construction projects at a time. It's the highest cost of all plans. Again, with this addition to the high school in the future, we will need additional room at the high school. And now this time we would actually be redistricting all the elementary schools for K-6 also. And again, the time frame is similar to the Plan B. So what I did for you
Marietta
on this page,
Ruella has joined the meeting.
So what I did for you on this page is I kind of broke down, my recommendation is not to go with Plan C. So I kind of put Plan A and Plan B here in front of you, kind of side by side with each other. It's the same information that were on the previous sides, but I figured it might be easier for us to take a look at it on one slide. So based on the information and the 3 projects that we investigated, and again, I give kudos to Jerry Tague for getting this done, especially in this time. You know, we had 3 projects that we were looking at and trying to cost out and do schematics for and all of that. And it was a lot of work. We weren't sure we could get one planned to present to you today, much less all 3 projects planned and presented to you this evening. So based on this information and knowing that we have Applegarth School that we really have to take a close look at, The administration's recommendation would be if we were going to move forward with a referendum for December, would be to move with Plan B. And the reason for that is it really does meet our needs for the near future. The biggest negative here, but it would have been in any of the plans, is and eventually we would need that addition at the high school. However, in the economic situation that we're in right now, and with the unknowns from the COVID-19, we don't know how this is going to affect. We know it's going to affect the economy. We don't know how much it's going to affect the economy yet. We don't know how this is going to affect the construction or students coming to our districts. My recommendation would actually be to postpone this until we get a little bit better idea of that. But that would be my recommendation to the board. So what I've also included here after this is all of the site plans, the schematics that were shared previously on the at the BG&T meeting. That way it's all in one place for the community and for the board to be able to see. Okay, that's what I have for you, Mr. Ryback.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Alvick. I'll open it up to questions or comments from the board. I can't see any board members, so please just call your name out. I can't.
This is Ken.
I can. Go.
Hi, how are you? Dr. Alvick, thank you very much. I appreciate your, you've given us the overview and taking the time to do this. And I know that a lot of work has gone into this over the last couple of years, but I know you've done a lot of work with your team over the last year or so. So thank you. My question has to do with, so we know we have urgent needs, right? We know that we have a major on-house student population, but we also know that we're up against huge economic odds that are against us. What I'd like to know, though, is, and I know none of us can see the future, but we have to plan for different scenarios anyway. So going into, let's say, September, where we know we're probably going to still have to social distance and things like that, if we're going to put this off for a while, should we be making a contingency plan to put trailers into where we need them most to alleviate that pressure, especially with distancing, social distancing, and doing things like that? Or are we going to create? Do you foresee us creating a plan where we're still doing some? And I don't want to get killed here by my wife and by other parents, but maybe some virtual classes and things like that to help with social distancing and help alleviate that pressure.
And that's the big question mark, right? Yeah, I honestly don't know how September is going to look. I know that there's lots of things being tossed around at the state level. Things like split sessions, things like remote learning on alternate days, remote learning for some classes. Plus, if there's a resurgence of the virus, are we going to be back on full-time remote learning again? So there's a lot of questions. So to just say, well, we can just add, there's no way for us to just add trailers in September. There's no way we can afford that. Especially even with the unknown of state funding for the fall.
Right. Thank you.
Ken, are you finished?
I have a question.
Mr. Mayo, go ahead.
Dory, Dr. Ravitch, can you describe what a academic pod is compared to a classroom?
Okay, so the academic pod at Brookside, the way that Brookside was developed, and I'm glad you asked me about Brookside because that's my home. So the academic pods, they actually created like squares of classrooms. So they had classrooms along the inside and classrooms along the outside. So it's really just a wing of the building.
Okay, all right.
So we have multiple classrooms within it, and it's a wing of the building. It was actually, when Brookside was actually designed, it was designed to add an additional pod on the back. They just called it a pod, it's a wing.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else comment, question? Mr. Pelori?
Yeah, Mr. President, Dr. Alwick and to Mr. Tague, thank you very much for a very thorough and exhaustive amount of information and work that you guys have done over the last 3 months. I really appreciate it. I did not think that you're going to make the deadline as we discussed. My general impression when I saw this this morning was that the numbers are a lot higher than I initially visualized, or at least I thought they would come to. And as most of the people think that based on the two failed referendums, I thought we would come around a number around 50 to 60 million. That's going to be palatable for our taxpayers to do the things we need to do. So this is clearly outside of that. I did speak to Jerry Tague a little bit in terms to better understand the numbers and the methodology in which he came up with the numbers. And the responses I received were very satisfactory. However, they did use a significant amount of contingencies because of the unknowns that kind of lead to this kind of information. But I'm really surprised that they got it down to $1, which is not in engineering world that we typically estimate. But that shows that they have a method that they followed in coming up with the numbers. One thing that I was a little confused between what I read this morning, and things might have changed, and the plans that you presented, is Plan A had about 1,410 additional students. Plan B had 1,904. Plan C had 1,904. And in the plans that I reviewed this morning, there were 1,273, 1,223 range. So why is there a difference in the number of students going to be accommodated in each of these options? That's my first question.
I'm not sure what numbers you were looking at this morning, but the numbers, when I look at Plan A, if we're adding an addition to the high school, it was additional about 200 students, and then the golf site school, this is Plan A, the golf site school would be 1,227. So when you add those two projects together, you get 1,410. And then on Plan B, you have the 1,000 student school, you have additional capacity at high school, and then you have additional capacity coming at the Barkley Brook and Brookside schools.
The second question is on the really on the schedule that was presented along with the plans. I see that the contracts were running pretty much in parallel in terms of design and had the same amount of time frame for designs. I don't think that's really needed because the designing a brand new school in a brand new site, for example, whether it's on the golf site or in the Apple Garth, would take about 14 months from what I saw on the schedule, whereas doing additions to the high school should not take 14 months. So I think you showed that in your slides that actually you were able to get the high school part open about a year sooner than if it was a brand new school, correct?
Yes.
And that process applies to the other Plan B and Plan C as well.
Yes.
Correct. Okay. So that's more consistent than the schedule that I saw. So it seems like things have been fine-tuned a little bit. So I'm happy to see that. But thank you very much. Thanks to you and everyone else who's involved in doing this. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Flory. Any other board member with a question or comment?
Mr. Ryback, it's Kathy.
Mrs. Kalapanowicz, sure.
Okay, so first I'd like to thank the administration for, like everybody else said, for getting this information to us so quickly and in this economic time where it's been hard to get a lot of the state agencies to help us. So from what I'm hearing, Dr. Albeck, you're recommending that we delay the December referendum to some future time?
I am, because I don't know how we go out to the community in this economic time for $100 million referendum. I don't know how we would get that passed.
Right, because as far as I know, I've heard the figure 30% of Monroe families are out of jobs and the stock market has declined and seniors are not going to be able to afford this right now. So if we decided to postpone this for a few months, do we need to pick a referendum today? Or can we see what kind of guidelines the state might come out with and how much money we might be getting for these projects?
Well, that would be up to the board. If we wanted to move, if you picked a project this evening and the board voted on a project this evening, even if we delayed it, we could prepare all of the paperwork and things that we needed in order. There's a lot more things that go into this. For we have to, update the long-range facilities plan. We have to get all of the ed specs done for each of the projects. There's a lot that would go into this. Remember, if if we wanted to go for a December referendum, we absolutely have to have a vote this evening, because all of the paperwork and all of that information would have to be done by June, a June submission to the state in order to possibly get it, on the December referendum. If we didn't have a vote this evening, we would have to have a vote in the next month if we wanted to postpone it, because we do need to move forward with this if we want to get something on the books.
Could I say something, please?
Oh, okay.
Who's, is that Mr. Pelori?
Tufano? Mr. Tufano.
Oh, Mr. Tufano, sure. I'm sorry, I couldn't see you, Peter.
Okay. Dory, I agree with your decision on B. And I'd also like to thank everyone for getting the numbers fast. Unfortunately, that's the problem. These numbers were given to us very fast. The gentleman from EPIC who gave his presentation said to us he wasn't able to get in touch with any modular companies, and nobody called him back. And I think that puts us at a disadvantage because we don't really have any true numbers. I called the modular company this morning and they picked right up for me. So I don't understand why he couldn't get through, but I did. And I think we need to hold off on that, on telling the public that number until we have an accurate number. We don't have an accurate number. This was done fast. The gentleman from EPIC said that he couldn't get in touch with the modular companies to get prices. He was basing it off, previous projects. And I don't think that we're doing the right thing if we push anything ahead today without the exact numbers. We've been quotes given to him by the modular companies directly.
Are you finished, Mr. Tufano? Did you finish? Okay, Mr. Pelori, you had a hand up?
This is the area that I do work in, so I can shed some light to Peter's comments. Even if a contractor or a construction company gives you an estimate, that's not what is typically used. You do use either the means book that has the industry standard costs, or you use the previous contract that came in at a number, and that's what you use. You'll never take the number actually from a contractor when doing cost estimating. That's just the general information I'm giving.
Okay. Anyone else?
This is Paul. I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Mr.
I may. Thank you to everybody that worked on these plans. It is good to have options. So appreciative of that. My simple question is this. So we're putting 4 trailers at the high school this summer. And I assume this proposed mini addition to the high school doesn't interfere with those 4 trailers, or does it replace those 4 trailers?
Well,
My question.
We would actually, once this addition opened, we would remove those trailers.
Oh, okay.
But those trailers are not planned to be in the space where these additions would be happening.
But they become not necessary. So we're renting the trailers. As soon as we build this mini addition, we no longer need the trailers.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Question.
Michelle?
Somonio? Sure, go ahead.
Okay, Dr. Alvick, you have on Plan A modulars. Are those modulars that we have been talking about that are an upgrade from the trailers, or is that something different? The definition of that?
Plan A?
Yes.
Plan A, it's the part of the high school addition would be modulars, which would be similar to what Edison used.
About how
yes,
many?
but only part of it would be that.
And who said that was due to the configuration of the current high school building?
The contractor.
And that contractor is EPIC?
Yes.
And does EPIC deal or build in with modulars, or do they just do brick and mortar?
He deals with all of it, and he's used across the state. So yes.
Does he install modulars?
Yeah, my understanding is he has done it. Yes, that's what he shared with the Buildings and Grounds Committee last week.
Okay, because I understand that someone who and I know EPIC did the high school, and I believe he did Oak Tree. Is that correct?
I don't know off the top of my head. I do not know.
Okay, I don't know is Mr. Tega in the audience? No.
No.
Okay. Well, because I mean, I would imagine that it's definitely better, for a contractor to have a brick and mortar building. I think there's a lot more money in it. Not to say anything about it, but I mean, sometimes I think that when we're discussing the modulars, people aren't giving them a fair shake or a fair look at, especially under our circumstances. I mean, if we could take tens of millions of dollars off of a referendum because we use modulars that do have a life expectancy of at least 10 to 20 years, I'm disappointed that there's not more of that in the discussion. Do you have a number of how many modulars in referendum in a Plan A they were talking about?
No, I don't have that specific. It would be the area that would be modular would be the music room off the side.
Off the side
of the building. So if you're looking at the front of the high school, it would be on the right side of the building.
Where the music room, that would go into that little parking lot that's off of the music room on the right.
Yeah.
It's west. I mean, I'm sorry, it faces east.
I don't know whether it's east or west. Sorry.
Okay, you're looking at the building. The back of the building is north. To the right is east.
Then yes, to the east.
Okay. And could you explain Butler Building? I wasn't at the Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting.
Yeah, apparently the Butler, and maybe Mr. Gorski can help me with that too. The Butler building is actually, because there's already an overhang and already the wall on the building, it's just the additional area that would be needed to close in the classroom.
Doctor?
Yes.
Doctor, it's my understanding that the part with the overhang was problematic for the Butler building or a modular because of the design itself, that Epic claimed that lent itself to stick-built as being the best option. The Butler building, as you mentioned before, was going to be off of the weight room.
Right.
And the Butler building is actually cheaper than modular construction according to Epic. And it lends itself well to that space that you were building the new weight room in because it's basically rectangular. It's a simple structure to prefabricate.
Okay, if I can follow up, I'm sort of confused. I thought you said that you can't even do a Butler building near the overhang, adjacent to the overhang. Is that correct?
Yes, but where the overhang is, it would be stick building, regular construction. The Butler building is where the gym is, that area.
I know, but, okay. So I think with any plan that we either decide on now or going forward, we have to get our designs or our architects to be able to not just confine us to the future of stick building, because that's where the highest cost is. I mean, we have to start asking these people to make sure when they give us designs that they can accommodate different scenarios down the road. We are just getting, it's becoming unsustainable to just do brick and mortar. As much as I would prefer that, it is unsustainable.
Excuse me, who is that? I keep hearing a bell. I don't know what that is.
I don't know if it's me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something's going off there. Okay.
Mrs. Armenia, you're absolutely correct. And I know when we worked with Epic and when Mr. Tague worked with Epic, we asked him to look at what the cheapest option would be for each of those types of construction. And that's where this information came from.
Right, I know, but we're stuck with the past and the fact that they did not accommodate different kinds of construction. They've only sort of secured future buildings with brick and mortar. So I'm just saying, any of the designs that we choose, I think we would have to ask them to make sure that it would accommodate a variety of different structures. Look, if we have the money, if the economy improves, if everybody wants to pay higher taxes, great, and we can put beautiful buildings up. Today I just passed the West Windsor Plainsboro Middle School, and it looked magnificent. I don't know that we have the resources to do that, but any design, my point is, any design that we have going forward should not restrict us simply to the most expensive additions in construction. So that's my point.
Steve, I
I'd like to just comment on, at the BG&T meeting, I know there's some other views on this, but I know Epic, the representative from Epic, was telling us that in reality, he felt he used the term stick, we call brick and mortar, I think we're talking the same thing, is actually going to be less expensive than the modulars. And he brought up a few reasons of the manufacturers of the modular units very often raise their prices. They're not consistent with their pricing. I never did business with them. I don't know. I'm telling you what he said. So I'm not so sure, based on what he said, that a modular is always going to be cheaper. I just wanted to comment. That's what came
You know,
out.
some people clearly have an interest in promoting their own manner of construction. That's all I'm saying.
Well, he does both, I think. He just doesn't recommend modular units. And he's not a modular rep, or he's not a brick and mortar rep, for lack of a better term. He just doesn't recommend that. I know there's varying opinions. I'm just bringing out what he said. Mr. Polari, go ahead.
No, I had a question.
Jill had a question before me.
I'm sorry, Andy. I think you both. You want to? All right,
Jill.
Go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, Steve, there is a way to get everybody's face on your screen at once.
That's nice. I don't know.
I'll have to show you later.
All right.
Mr. Alvich, can you explain? I know you chose Applegarth over building on the new golf course because Applegarth has some serious needs. Can you explain what those needs are and the possible cost effects if we don't build a new school there? If something were to happen at Applegarth?
Well, I think, we all know that the boiler is aging at Applegarth. It's working. It's working right now. We all know that there's the older section of Applegarth School. If any of those, the roof at Applegarth School, if any of those things go, we have insurance. We do have emergency funds that we would be able to replace them. But do we want to put $1 million into a boiler of a school that we may be replacing? So does it make sense to just to replace the boiler, or does it make sense to replace the school? We do have emergency contingency plans so that if something happened at Applegarth, we already have an agreement with the township that we could use the senior center for a short period of time. This is not something for a long period of time. Other things that we've looked at as possibilities, not something that I would really recommend unless it was an emergency. Millstone Township would rent us a wing of one of their schools if we needed to do, and it's relatively close. So there's contingencies if we had to. None of those things are things that I would want to recommend.
So how old is the boiler? How old are we talking about?
Oh, Mr. Gorski, do you have that answer?
I think it's 84 years old, 1936.
The boiler goes back
Yeah.
to the 1930s.
And how old is the roof?
There's different roof sections. I can't answer in general. We've replaced some of them. Some of them are coming due. Some of them are past due.
And
But overall, it's important to note that Applegarth is inspected every year prior to students accompanying the school year, and both our environmental specialist as well as other specialists, right down to the playgrounds, are fully inspected and approved and safe for occupancy before we open. So although there is a risk to some of these systems that are beyond their useful life for failing, as Dr. Alvik said, well, we have plans in place already in dealing with them. It won't stop education from continuing.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Nicotinsky, then Mr. Polari.
Yeah, I got a question. Do you guys have a cost for Plan B just for Applegarth?
I don't have that.
Do you have a price of the boiler on Applegarth and the roof?
Mr. Gorski, do we have estimates if one of those things went?
We do not have estimates if either of those things go, but we are comfortable in our conversations planning for this that we have emergency reserve that could cover either of them, plus we do have insurance.
Because to be honest, I'd rather spend $5 million to replace the boiler and the roof than $100 million on a new school right now. So I don't understand how you guys don't have any split costs between every project. Because $115 million is a lot of money. And if we're, I thought we were just going to extend our existing schools with modular. And I just can't see, 20 million for modular. So it's got to be, the cost has got to be the Applegarth site, the Applegarth school. So I think we should look into see how much the roof, the boiler, or anything that we need to fix for the school right now, maybe extend the school with modular instead of building like $100 million of new school right now. Because it's just way
That
too
would
much.
take us back to the drawing board and we'd be starting over, just so you know. Which is fine, we could do that, but that would take us back.
I think it was mentioned in the BGT committee that plan B was to extend all the existing schools that we needed, not build a new one.
And we did look at that. We cannot extend all of the schools because there's not site for all of them to do that. And some of the work, specifically at Brookside, there's a lot of site work that needs to happen in order to even build an addition there.
Plenty of room on Applegarth instead of building a new school.
Dr. Elvig?
I want to see the cost for just the Applegarth site for the new school.
Dr. Elvig? I remember in the past, we've had multiple conversations with our architects and engineers about Applegarth. And the guidance that we had received was that it would be cheaper for a new school as proposed than a restoration of all of the existing structures within the school. The problem with Applegarth is, unlike its sister school, Barclay Brook, it has never had a material systems upgrade other than some additions put on and some roof sections replaced. But the boilers, the piping, the windows, the roofs, a lot of the other systems in the school are way beyond their useful life. So it's like an analogy with Applegarth would be an old car that is still dependable, but it is beyond its useful life in terms of the engine, the transmission, the tires, the wheels, the windshield, every part of it.
Mr. Nicotinsky, are you finished? So I call on Mr. Polari, or do you have any more?
Yeah, but I would like to see the cost for Applegarth. You guys can email me later or whenever. I want to see the difference.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Polari.
I have a two-pronged question. My understanding from the BGNT meeting, and maybe other board members can help me recollect, I thought the EPIC construction was actually a construction managers and construction supervision company. I don't think they're the people who actually go and build the project itself. That's how I understood. I mean, in other words, somebody designs the thing and gives the design plans to the contractor, and the contractors will come and bid on it. And once we pick the lowest reasonable and legal bid, then EPIC would come in to make sure that the project is being constructed and executed the way the specs and the plans call for. Is my understanding incorrect, Mike?
You are correct, Mr. Polari. They are cost engineers and site managers. And we
don't mind me saying, I just want to say one thing, Mr. I'm sorry. I mentioned earlier that the representative from EPIC doesn't really sell modulars or really brick and mortar. He's a manager, so he's sort of impartial, and his opinion was that the stick construction in the long run would actually be less expensive than modular.
So the point I'm trying to make is, first of all, if my assumption of what I heard is correct, that some of my colleagues on the board are thinking that EPIC actually does the construction and they would benefit by doing the stick construction rather than the modular construction. I just wanted to make sure that I understood correctly and so that the public understands. The second question is, thank you. And the second question I really have is, when you look at all these numbers, consistently we're looking for 1,900. Let's just round it off for the sake of discussion that 2,000 students on an average we need, what we need to accommodate. So I don't know if just by doing the extension of the modulars itself can accommodate 2,000 students. I'm not even sure if we have an example like that in the state or maybe even in the country for that matter. And one of the things, obviously I'm not for this $100 million. I'm telling you right off the bat that I don't think it's going to be a practical thing to put out $100 million referendum right now. But having said that, I think the performance specs that need to be written for modular construction need to be developed in such a way that construction that we do is going to last is significant, even 20 years. Because if you look at the Middle Lake School, I believe it was a modular in 1970s, and it hardly lasted about 20, 25 years before we had to take it down, compared to Woodland School, which was built, I heard, sometime around 1950s, is still standing. So the cost benefit of that, we can always kick the can down the road and see what may happen and just go with the modular. But I just wanted to see, before we kind of conclude, if there is an example of expansion of schools that would accommodate 2,000 just using modular. If you have an example, please share that with me.
I don't have an example for you.
Mr. Rybeck?
Yes, Ms. Arminio.
Okay. Mr. Polari, thank you very much. I appreciate the clarification on EPIC, but if they are cost engineers and site managers, I would think, as you mentioned, that they could provide us with a cost analysis of modulars. And let me reiterate, my preference would be brick and mortar every time. But I think we have waited so long to accommodate the students that we have. I prefer not kicking any can down the road. I wish we could do it. But our reality is that we've had 2 failed referendums. We have our students that are the students in the near time frame are not having, are not being accommodated. So I agree with you. I prefer the brick and mortar, but for the children in the next 5 to 8 years, I think we have an obligation to provide something. If we keep getting stuck with failed referendums, we're not going to have modulars or brick and mortar. So our point is to accommodate our students in the near future, but also down the road. So it's a very tough balancing act. That's why, I'm not opposed to having both, but I think we need a cost analysis. If these guys are cost engineers, I mean, we have heard repeatedly that the modular people don't call administrators back and contractors back, but they call members of the public back. So I don't get that. I think we need a cost analysis.
Yeah, Mr. President, if I may respond, but please don't consider my responding to some of these as I would prefer one versus the other. I'm completely open with that. Whatever works best for our district is what needs to be done. I completely agree with you. Our need is immediate. So I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, no, I got it. I appreciate that. Thanks.
And I think, Ken, if I'm not mistaken, you brought that up in your comments at the very beginning about meeting the immediate needs and alternate plans or what have you. So you were ahead of the pack there, young man.
Steve, if I may, I just want to, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I think since we seem to have a little time here, that instead of picking a plan and then moving forward with a plan where we're not going to have a referendum right now, maybe we need to and do some outside of the box thinking. And I know that Dr. Alvick and her team are doing that. But just so that we could see if there's a mix of things that we could do with virtual learning and things like that could alleviate some of the stresses that we're going through and maybe save the taxpayers some money at the same time until we get on a firmer footing.
I have a question. If anybody else does that, you could certainly go before me. Does anyone else want to have a comment or make a question? Okay. Dr. Alvick, if we postpone the actual referendum, I don't know what month, but whatever. Could we also do, and let's say we pick a plan and we postpone an actual referendum. Can we still look into costs of certain things and maybe make it, change something so it'll be less expensive? Is that doable?
Yes, as long as we kept in mind what the final date would be for a submission for a referendum. So you'd have to pick when do you want to postpone it to, and then we'll work backwards on when we need to have a final answer.
Okay, I think that might help. Anybody else want to comment on that?
Mr. Rybeck?
Yes.
I don't want to postpone it to the effect that we stop talking about it until a month before. If we do, and it breaks my heart because I have been a proponent of getting this done yesterday, last year, the year before. But again, understanding the reality of our economic situation and that of our community, if we postpone it, I only want to postpone it to the very next available date, which would be what date?
If I'm not mistaken, so it would be July, so everything would have to be in by January, if I'm not mistaken.
Is it, Gorski, is it July?
No, I don't think you can have a one in July.
January, what am I saying? January. But
We
it
plan
would have
on
to be in by
December.
July.
There's a referendum date in January, so the most condensed wait would be 30 days.
I don't understand what that means.
The shortest delay could be a month.
Okay.
The referendum dates would be December, January, March, and April. Am I correct, Mr. Gorski?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Mr.
I
President,
think we're missing one there, Mr. Ryback, because I think it's 5 times a year, so I'm not sure what the other date is.
Yeah, the other one would be, you can have one in September, you could have one in November, and then you can have one in December. So I think there's really 6 dates because the April date coincides with those districts that vote in April.
Okay. Mr. Pelori, was that a hand?
yeah, my question was to Dory. In your presentation, Dr. Alwick, you said that the ultimate construction is going to be completed by 2024. Given the schedule, the way it's laid out, that's the optimum time to open up the schools for kids. If it's delayed by, I just heard January before I raised after I raised my hand, but what would be the impact? I mean, if we miss it by a couple of months, you're going to be missing it by an entire school year, is the point I'm trying to get at. So you're going into 2025. What are the implications of that if nothing is available to you until 2025 instead of 2024?
Well, again, unfortunately, we don't know the effects of construction or students coming to our school. I mean, we have a demographer study that gives us a projection of the student enrollment. If we extended by a year, I think maybe 150, 170 students, and I'm just speaking off the cuff here. I don't have the demographer study right in front of me. We would be looking at that increase. But again, we don't know what the increase would be, or we don't know what the effect of construction is going to be with the health crisis and the economic situation. So we may not get as many students as what's projected to get if they're not selling the homes or building the homes.
Yeah, my point is, I think we need to take that into consideration while looking at when you want to go for a referendum. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Well, we have to decide whether we want to pick a plan and then put off the referendum. So there's really 2 decisions that I think have to be made here. Anybody else want to chime in on this? Anybody have feelings on this, one way or the other?
I would like to say something real quick.
Mr. Tufano, is that you?
Yes. I'd like permission from Dory to get in touch with the modular salesman and have him contact Jerry. Seems like the guy from Epic might have the wrong number.
Yeah, if you want to send that to me, Mr. Tufano, I can definitely give the number to Mr. Tate.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, not seeing any other hands from the board members, I'll open it up to the public.
Hey, Dory, I got that phone number for you if you want.
Okay, I'm good. I have a pen.
Okay. All right, I'm going to open it up to the public now. You have 4 minutes. This is only to address the referendum. Please state your name and address. Mr. Washington, do we have anyone? I'm sure we do.
Mr. Board President, I see Beth DePiro.
Sure. Welcome, Mr. Piero.
Beth DePiro.
Yes. Mr. Piero, go ahead. I don't hear it.
Mr. Board President, we have Gianni Sadamaster.
Hello,
Who do we have?
this is Ganeshwar.
Has left the meeting.
Gianni Sadamaster.
Sotomaster, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome.
Yeah, hello, hi. So I was hearing the phone numbers. My name is Ganeshwar Samasla, address 283 Morning Glory Drive.
I'm sorry. There's a lot of background noise. I ask you to say your name and address again, just for the record. Then I can't hear anything.
Mr. President, I can't hear him either. Board President, you have Krishina Takali.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Krishina.
Somebody else is making this noise. It's not me. Okay. All right. Can you mute everybody else other than the speaker, please?
Who's talking?
This is Krishna Dekale. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Krishna.
Right. So there are a couple of questions I had. One, I looked at the demographers reports and the number of students that we had registered or enrolled in our classes year over year for the last few years, right? We seem to be consistently adding about 120 students or 150 students, roughly, give or take, between 120 and 150. However, the demographers reports have come in at a on the which are higher than what our anticipated numbers are. That's one concern I have. And did we take the actual registrations? The question I have, one, is did we take the actual registrations into account when we went in with the plan, or did we go in with the demographers reports when we went in with the plan? And the second question I have is, if you were to look at the plan per student, right, or the cost per student, it's not necessarily true that plan A is cheaper, right? Because plan A is only dealing with 1,400 students, whereas plan B is looking at 1,900 students. And the third question I have is, in my personal opinion, I think we need to go work with the DOE that we should actually start looking at virtual classes for some of the subjects, at least some of the subjects, staying where we are, even if after the reopening we'll have to figure out a way of figuring out, what kind of social distancing norms come into play and everything else when the schools open. That makes me think that we probably need to not even pick a plan now. Push everything on the back burner, go look at the short-term plans for this year, next year, and then figure what's the best path forward after we have some sort of semblance into our lives.
Okay. Yes.
If it pleases you, I can address the gentleman's first two questions.
Mm-hmm.
The first one has to do with enrollment. He referred to about 125, 150 student increases when you look back over time. That is true. The difference between the look back over time and the future projections is because of the future projections incorporating new housing developments and the effect of new enrollment from those new housing developments. Obviously, when you look back, that can't be incorporated into the past, but it is projected into the future, and that's why it appears more dramatic looking forward. Secondly, Mr. Takali's comments about cost per student, he is correct. Project A takes into consideration and accommodates less students. So if you looked at it strictly on an accommodation of students per cost basis, I agree with the point that the speaker made. And the third point had to do with virtual learning. It's beyond my scope.
Dr. Alvick, did you want to comment on that?
So with regard to the virtual learning, I don't know what the state is going to allow in the future. Right now, they're allowing us to do the remote learning and to do the virtual learning, and it's counting toward our 180 days. So if we are allowed to continue to do that, yes, that is something we will absolutely look at. but until the state approves us using the virtual instruction to count toward our 180 days, we'll have to plan when that decision is made. But right now we're able to do it, and it's counting toward the 180 days. I can't say that that's going to continue in the future unless the state makes that adjustment.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tegali. Mr. Washington, we have another speaker.
Yes, sir, Mr. Board President. You have Michael Oleski.
Mr. Oleski, all yours. Welcome. Michael? I don't hear him.
You can hear me now?
Now I can. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Steve. Excuse me. I'm going to make my comments real quick here. I think you folks are getting close, to a plan that makes sense, number one, and also that's got a decent chance of maybe being approved by the voters here in Monroe. And of course, I'm talking about the Plan B that you folks were talking about a little while ago. I guess maybe a couple of further comments there. I kind of like the idea of Plan B proceeding, I guess, with developing the further details of Plan B. But again, putting it on hold, as Dr. Alvick had mentioned, and during the further development of that plan, and also those submissions that are going to be needed for the state, that you work the issue of maybe refining the numbers around the modular pieces of the plan, and maybe any other further touch-ups that might be needed, I guess, at this point. But I do like the idea of proceeding, trying to finish the job that you've started. You've probably got 80% of the job done. Finish the job, put it on the back burner right now, and of course, continue to kind of watch things as they progress, both here in the state and around the country. Second question I did want to ask, though, very important. You folks probably made some kind of judgment regarding the golf site. I know there was talk about the BOE or the district administration getting a copy of whatever traffic reports that were available from the township in and around Applegarth Road. And I would appreciate a comment or two in that regard. That's it, Steve.
Thank you. Dr. Alvick, did you want to take that?
I know after one of the BG&T committee meetings, it was asked that we get a copy of whatever the traffic studies the township has done, and those are available on our district website. We did get a copy of them, and they're on the district website.
Thank you. Mr. Gorski, did you want to add to that, or?
No, I think Dr. Alvick answered the question.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public? Mr. Washington?
Yes, sir, Mr. Board President. You have Pradeep Malam.
Okay, Pradeep, welcome. Pradeep?
Steve, can you hear me?
Yes, very well. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for taking my question. And so thanks the administration to bring up this everything. But I have some questions on this one. Number one, I like the car analogies they used in BG&T meetings and today by Mr. Grosky. But when I see the prices, I'm not buying Corolla, I'm not buying a Jaguar, but the price looks like it's Rolls Royce. And we don't know what the details, what they are putting in the school, we don't know. And they don't have a breakup. Like HS edition is going to, on Plan B, HS edition is going to take 20 million. Applegarth is taking 25 million. That breakup is also not there. Without breaking up the amount on each school and each pod, how can we arrive on a cumulative amount? That is first question. The second question, because Jamesburg is sending around like 3% kids into our school district, are they absorbing the 3% of the total project here? Or they are sending only to high school, around like 10% of the kids from Jamesburg to our high school population? So are they absorbing 10% of high school addition cost are there?
Those are questions?
Yeah, those are my questions. And I have one follow-up after the response, based on the response of the second question.
Mr. Gorski, I see you would like to answer that. Go ahead.
Certainly. The Jamesburg Monroe agreement That took the two districts out of litigation for the tuition dispute. Calls for no future construction interest costs to be passed to Jamesburg.
All right, thanks. That answer.
Because of an important factor. Jamesburg's enrollment is flat. They are not increasing students to Monroe, causing the need for the development of the schools further.
Okay, thanks. But on follow-up of that one, why do we need to give a voting right on this particular referendum or in the BOE meeting to Jamesburg representative if they are not going to contribute anything?
Certainly the matter does affect Jamesburg schools and they would have a right to vote on this.
Okay, it might affect them. Okay, it might affect them, but it is going to hurt us more. And we didn't elect that particular representative. Why we need to take a decision based on that particular representative vote? If they are not contributing to the cost and they are not going to give us any extra money, and they are just paying the usage fee. If those 10% students are not part of our high school is not this much crowded, and we don't really need to expand that much.
Pradeep, legally, their students come to our school, they're considered
I agree. Legally, we have a binding agreement. That's why I'm asking, why do we need to take that vote into consideration when they are not contributing to the money?
I'm trying to answer your question, if you give me a second. They have every right to be there, and the Jamesburg rep has every right to vote on this referendum.
Voting has been extended by the previous year board or like a year before under the leadership of Kathy Kalpanovich. Before that, they have very few rights on what items they need to vote on it.
Well,
let me finish. Let me finish. If my 4 minutes is not over, okay?
10 seconds.
For the last, no, I'm counting my timer. I don't hear a beep from you. You can't make a beep. Thank you.
All right. You're out of time. Next person.
Mr. Board President, you have Ram Raghunath.
Okay. Ram, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Steve. Hope everyone is doing well.
Thank you.
Yeah, first of all, thank you to the superintendent and the administrative staff, right, for really working hard and putting this together. I know it was not an easy exercise, but really hats off to the team for making this happen. I guess we are in a very tough situation, right? With a lot of these new unknowns now with the COVID situation and what's going to happen in the employment scenario. But I think as Mr. Oleski said, I think we have to please get this to the finish line, right? And so when I look at the proposals here, particularly the Plan B, it's very difficult, right? I don't know how you all are digesting this or reading this. But I would think at a minimum, we should be able to at least get some costs, high level for each of those chunks, right? The big chunks, right? MTHS, 13 classroom additions. I'm sure something has gone into estimating the cost for that. Same thing as Mr. Nitinsky was asking for the Applegate 1,000 student, whatever addition. I think there should be some numbers available. I know there may be some variance or, but I'm wondering why those numbers are not being shared. Why can't we get the building blocks of what went into Plan B and what went into Plan A? That's my first question. Second question is on, again, looks like we are, we have a sprinkling of modular, right? I heard the music school is going to be modular and high, right? Everything else is not. And also I had joined the BGNT meeting and then also some of the conversations here. Looks like Epic has, I don't know, I'm believing, I don't think Epic has really done enough diligence, to really give us the right cost estimates. I can understand it's a means book thing, as Andy was mentioning, but we have to be realistic, right? Over the next couple of years, costs of labor, construction, and a lot of these things are going to be much less, right? So these estimates should be reflective of that. right? And I don't know whether right now it reflects it. It still reflects the booming situation, I feel, from a cost perspective. So those are my couple of my questions. One is on why can't we get a little bit more of a breakdown? It will help inform all of you all and definitely the public. And two, I feel from what Epic has provided, I don't think enough diligence has been done truly for the modular constructions. And we could probably, with some more diligence, come up with some better cost alternatives for B and A.
Mr. Ryback?
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Alvin?
Epic does have the breakdown of the cost. So I will share that with the Board of Education tomorrow, and I will post it on the district website with this presentation. I'll update the presentation to include the breakdown of Plan B and the different costs of each part of it, if that's what the board would like me to do.
Thank you. That's a good idea. Anyone, are you finished? Mom? I guess, Mr. Washington, we have someone else.
Mr. Board President, you have Gurpreet Singh.
Gurpreet, welcome.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
So I would like to thank the administration for doing their due diligence and coming up with these plans. So I'm okay with either Plan A or Plan B. But my point would be that consider the plan which we will be able to sell in the referendum, where everybody in the town gets some benefit out of it. Like if only a certain section of the town gets some benefit from the referendum, then the other section won't vote for it. So we just have to make sure that whatever plan we come up with, Plan A or Plan B, we are able to sell it to the people and get the referendum passed only this time. And I would definitely favor the permanent fixes to our problems rather than going the modular route, which has a lot of issues. It's temporary in nature and there are other issues involved with that. So if we want to fix the school system, we need to fix it permanently. That's my comment on the whole referendum piece. Thank you.
Thank you. Washington, anyone else?
Mr. Board President, you have Ghazala Bora.
Well, Ghazala, welcome.
Good evening, Dr. Ryback. This is Ghazala Bora, 1 Miko Drive. I want to start by thanking Dr. Aldrich for doing this assessment and coming up so quickly with the plan after the February Board of Ed meeting. I just wanted to chime in on something that I think Krishna Takale said before me about the demographers report not really sounding right. And Mr. Gorski replied to that saying that is based on the construction. I think even if we considered what Mr. Gorski said, I don't think those numbers add up, because what we are saying is that there's going to be more construction in Monroe in the coming few years than there has been in the last decade. And I don't really think that's that adds up. So I just wanted to put it out there that when we put our plans together, that anomaly shouldn't be leading to our decision, because there definitely is an anomaly if we look at the growth in the past few years versus what is being projected now. Again, the Plan B is definitely a more economical plan, because if you do the math, Plan A is $70,000 for every student and only accommodates 1,400 students, versus Plan B is $60,000 per student and accommodates 1,900 students and addresses Apple Guard, which has been something that has been on the agenda on our back burner for 7 years that I know. So it's high time we address that. It's one of the sister schools, critical element. My kids don't go to that side of the school. My kids are not even in elementary, but I know from whatever I've seen and heard that Apple Guard needs to be addressed. So that would be, but after all this, I want to come back to what everybody before me has also said, that this is not the time to pick a plan. We probably need to hold off on picking a plan. The world as we know it has changed. We don't know what's coming our way in 3 months, 4 months. I feel like we need to keep going at it and coming up with more out of the box solution, and not pick a plan and do all the hard work before June and put it on a referendum, because the taxpayers are probably not going to be able to vote either on a 99 million referendum or 115 million. Either way, there's going to be too much of an ask when the world as we know it has changed. So thank you for your time, guys.
You're welcome. Anyone else from the public?
Mr. Board President, you have Christine Pucciarelli.
Well, Christine, welcome.
Hi.
Hi. We're all ears.
I'm trying to get back on.
We hear you.
Let me just get back on. How do I get this? Sorry.
Do you have a question? Mr. Washington, did we lose her?
Mr. Board President, looks like we lost her. I'll come back if we have time.
Okay.
Mr. Board President, you have C. Skirby.
From Skirby?
Yes, hi, Chrissy Skirby, 21 Preakness Drive. I just had a couple of comments. I do agree with the consensus that this probably isn't the right time to be asking the voters to approve a $100 million project. But with that said, I wanted to just give some comments. I did attend virtually all of the committee meetings that you held, and something that struck me as odd in the Buildings, Grounds, and Transportation Committee meeting, the gentleman from Epic made it clear that he did not have any experience with modular construction, that he has not had a project that he managed with that, and he did not have any costs that he could get because he was not able to contact any modular company. I remember when the board voted back a few months ago with the direction back to the administration, I had thought what was asked of the administration was to come up with a plan using brick and mortar and then a plan using modular to compare apples to apples. Basically, these three plans compare apples to oranges to bananas. And they don't give different costs for each one using modular or brick and mortar. And I do believe when he was referring to sticks, I do not think he was referring to brick and mortar. I think that was building using wood and not concrete. Those are just a couple of comments that I had. I think, like Mr. Nicotinsky said, even the ad hoc committee over a year ago was asking for modulars to be looked into and for cost estimates. And to date, the administration has not provided that. So of course, tonight, I wouldn't expect the board to be able to take a vote because you haven't been provided with the information that you've been requesting. And it would be irresponsible really to make a decision when you don't have the information that you've been asking for almost, it's been being discussed for a year, but no costs have been out there. So I really do hope that there could be contact made either through Mr. Tufano or Mr. Nicotinsky with the modular construction companies, and possibly, as Mr. Tufano asked at the BG&T meeting, bring a representative in from that company and have them give a presentation too, because listening to somebody who has said they had no experience can't really give an educated decision or opinion when they have never used that kind of building before. So I think that's important going forward. And that's all my comments. Thank you.
Mr. Washington, anyone else?
Yes, Mr. Board President, we have Sarah Aziz.
Hi,
Sarah, hi, welcome.
Hi, I'm Sarah Aziz, 3 Launcelot Drive. I have reviewed all 3 plans, and I don't think any of them is perfect. Plan C would address all of our current overcrowding problems and leave us room to grow to address the projected number of unhoused students. However, it's too expensive and will not pass. There is really a lot to like about Plan B because it addresses Applegarth and would house a greater number of students than Plan A. However, because it's possible that the newly built Applegarth school may be perceived as benefiting mainly students in one part of town, it could be voted down by residents who live in other parts of town because of its higher cost. Our district has never passed a referendum over 100 million, and I think it's important to learn the lessons of history. Because of this, I think the board should consider supporting Plan A as the most fiscally conservative option. It's not the most comprehensive option, but it is the most likely to pass because it's less than $100 million. It will also appeal to voters all over the town because it will result in a creation of a district-wide grade 5 to 6 school. A greater number of families would feel a personal stake in it, and it could generate higher voter turnout. It's important to remember that the previous referenda were defeated in very low turnout elections. In light of the bad economy, it might be wiser for the board to address the problems of the other schools at a later date. Again, I don't think Plan A is perfect or ideal, but it is the plan that I think is most likely to pass, and it would be a meaningful step forward in addressing our overcrowding problem. I do think it's reasonable to postpone the referendum until our economy approves, because asking for any tax increase, no matter how minimal, could be difficult when so many people are out of work. Regarding the modular construction plan, I think it would be a great idea if we had only a projected number of 100 or 200 unhoused students. However, I believe we have a projected number of over 2,000 unhoused students, and I haven't found any examples in the state of New Jersey where a school district was able to alleviate that level of overcrowding without building a new brick and mortar school. If I saw other examples of other New Jersey districts alleviating this level of overcrowding using modular classrooms alone, I would be more than happy to support it. But I just don't see any such evidence at all. Edison certainly did not address its problem by, adding its modular classrooms. I think we should base our decisions on evidence and not speculation. I just have not seen any evidence anywhere in the state of New Jersey of a district addressing this level of overcrowding using modular constructions. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I'd like to make one comment, if I can, Mrs. Aziz. One of the things that, I've been hearing is, well, this part of town won't vote for it unless it includes something for them. And I know that might be very realistic. Maybe I'm being a little idealistic, but I'd like to think that we have to think of Monroe as one district and do what's best for all of Monroe and not do something because it benefits the north end, the south end, We have to do what's best for all the kids, and this entire district is one. That's all I have to say on that.
I agree.
Thank you.
Mr. Board President, we'll try Christine Pucciarelli again. That's the last hand I see raised.
Okay, Ms. Pucciarelli, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
I hope you're well too.
So hard to hear. I don't know why I'm not hearing it great, but
Can you hear me now?
I'm calling on the appeal from my son, Thomas Pucciarelli.
Mr. Pucciarelli, Mrs. Pucciarelli, this isn't the time. When we go into closed session, that's when that will happen.
Right. We're only commenting on the suggestions for the referendum. Your thing is closed session.
Oh, sorry, no.
That's okay. That's okay. All right. So I want to make sure, Mr. Washington, there's no one else from the public?
No one else, Mr. Board President.
Okay, in that case, I can close this portion of the public session and turn it back to the board. It seems like we have some decisions to make. One, do we want to postpone this? If so, how long? Do we want to pick a plan now or not? I have a question. I want to make sure if we pick a plan now, that plan could be subject to alterations or changes based on any further conversations or information we get. Is that correct?
Yes, up until the time we have to submit the paperwork to the state, it can change.
And also, I think Mr. Chiarella's idea of doing what we can for virtual learning in case this is extended more. Ken, am I saying this correctly? I don't want to get you in trouble at home, so I'll say it.
Thank you, Steve.
All right. At any rate, so I'd like to hear from some board members now, and maybe we can make a decision. I don't know if we even have to make a motion at this point. Mr. Gorski, is this something we have to make a motion for, or could we just come to a sort of a collective decision?
Technically, you do not have to pass a motion to delay this. You would have to pass a motion to approve one of the plans.
Okay.
And a new timetable. but no action is required on this if you just want it to go to the next agenda item.
Okay, so
Unless
let
you
me,
wanted to memorialize it in the minutes.
all right, is that a hand, Mr. Pelori? I see you want.
Yes, it is, Mr. President. I think we heard from just about all the board members and the public, and I think it goes without saying, as much as I don't like it, because I've been pushing actually for the referendum to come in November, not even December. I was so rushing about even a month prior. There's no doubt in anybody's mind that the referendum should be going out for December. I think that's fairly unanimous among those members who are here, and I'm sure pretty much anybody else who is not speaking but listening to this would agree with. That's my first point. The second point is I think there is certainly I want to make sure I pick the right word. Continued interest in the modular construction. So picking any kind of a plan without satisfying some of the public and some of the board members until they feel comfortable with it would be somewhat irresponsible on part of the board. So if there is a consultant or a contractor who does the modular construction, wants to come in and give some examples of something that they did for other school districts, maybe we get a couple of them because we never take a bid from one person. So it's similarly, we want to get more than one person at different times to come and make a presentation, and then see if we can make some alter the plans and costs associated with it. Having said that, I think what I heard EPIC say, and I think Dr. Alvey kind of confirmed that each of these plans have like a blend of different things. They have the traditional brick and mortar, they have the butler construction, as well as they have the modular in it. So clearly EPIC got cost estimates for modular as well. So they must have gotten it from somewhere. And I think that's something that needs to be resolved before we vote on a plan. At least that's my opinion. That's all I have.
Okay, anyone else?
Mr. Ryback, it's Rupa.
Yes, go ahead.
So just listening to everything, first I do want to thank the administration. This was phenomenal to pull all this together in the midst of a pandemic. So I do thank you all. And just listening to everyone and everything from the public and our fellow board members, I do think we need to push this off a little. I think we'd be fiscally irresponsible if we didn't. But I'd also like to see how this pandemic plays out a little bit, what our school system is going to look like as we come out of this, because I think we're such a creative team in our school system that I think we might be able to come up with some blended learning and virtual learning aspects to maybe alleviate some of the pressure off the high school and maybe be able to switch things around a little bit and use some of those resources or money towards maybe Applegarth or somewhere else. So I think we should wait a little bit.
Okay, I'd like to get a little bit more consensus. So far, I had two board members.
Excuse me, I'm getting a message that Prakash Parat, was not called on.
I didn't know he was there.
I know, but I don't know why I'm getting it, but could Mr. Washington see if he's there?
We all got it, Michelle. We all got the message, yeah.
Mr. Ryback?
Yes.
Mr. Ryback, if it benefits the public, you may want to announce again the raising your hand feature if they wish to be selected to speak during a public forum. If you do not raise your hand, Mr. Washington cannot see that you wish to speak.
I hope everybody heard that. And members of the public, there's a feature to raise your hand that will notify Mr. Washington that you want to speak.
Steve?
Yes, Ken.
I don't want to, again, beat a dead horse, but I really think that I agree with nearly everything that Andy just said. And I think maybe he should say it again so that I don't have to repeat it. But I really think that that's what we need to do. We need to take our time, do our due diligence, take a look at these different options, take a little time, as Ms. Siegel just said, and really put, let's see what's going to happen with our economy and with our students, and then regroup and maybe if it's next month, even with buildings and grounds, and at the next meeting, and then see where we're at. Maybe we'll have a better idea.
So tentatively, would you all agree that we should look at January for a referendum?
Mr. Ryback?
Yes, Ms. Kalapalovich.
I would think that January might be too close to December, and I don't think there's.
I only said that because
Yeah.
a board member brought that up. So-
Yeah, I don't see what can happen between December and January that would make us wait just a month. I think there's too many unknowns out there. We don't have a clue where this virus is going to go. We don't know what we're going to be looking like in January or December or September. And I think we need to just take a deep breath and relax and wait and see how the economy comes back. And, where our community is going to be able to support us, where and when.
I was inclined to agree with that. I was actually thinking you would recommend April because number one, we get complaints that if a referendum is held in the winter, the seniors aren't here. We need a lot of time. We don't know how much time it's going to need to get the economy back. It's just one huge question mark, no matter where we go. And I think that we'd be really not doing our due diligence to consider the way, the state that the taxpayers are in, the state that the country's in. I'm hearing national unemployment of 14.5%, 17.5%, supposed to go up to 20%. I'm sure most individuals, their life savings has dropped 25, 30%. I think we'd be very prudent to wait. I don't know if we want to put any, month down, but I'm inclined to take it past January myself. That's what I was going to recommend. I was actually going to ask you if you want to consider April, or you think that's far out, but I was going to just throw that out as an option. So let me ask my colleagues here. What do you think about a possible referendum in April? Gives us so much time to look at things now and see and let the country heal a little bit.
Steve, if I may, Steve, it's Paul.
Yes, go ahead, Paul.
I was thinking about that, and I am a believer that we need to see what the state of education looks like in September, as well as the economy. And thinking about your time frame, you need a 6-month window from when you start the referendum to when you have it. So that would likely take us to October to get everything set, and then April is when we would have the vote.
Right.
Because I think that lines up with getting school back in September, hopefully, or whatever fashion that is. We'll know at least what that is. And then I think we can proceed in October for April, and then everybody gets to vote in April because most people are back by April. That's my 2 cents.
I mean, I'm certainly hearing a lot of positives about Plan B. That's fine, but there's also a lot of questions. So this gives us plenty of time to answer these questions and hopefully satisfy, a lot of the board members' concerns, public's concerns, and see what happens with the country. So I'm going to, we don't have to take a vote on it. I'm going to assume that we do not want to make a choice today, but are you up for, agreeable rather, for an April referendum? If you're not, say so.
Can I say something, please?
Yes.
Part of the problem is buildings, grounds, and transportation meeting is only an hour. Okay, this is something that needs a lot longer than an hour to discuss. I suggest that we get all cost estimators and modular construction salesmen and anybody that's going to be involved in this project, and we hold a special meeting that's not an hour long, because this is not a subject that needs an hour on speaking. So we should do some kind of a special meeting next month and then make this decision then, after we hear the exact costs of everything. We don't have exact costs, and delaying this might be doing more harm than good. But I think even if we want to delay it, we could wait till next month to delay it. But we really need to hear what the true costs from everybody are. And we need to get in touch with a modular company and find out the real deal, not what Epic thinks they're going to do. Because I can't see, if we sign a contract for modular units, a legal and binding contract on an estimate, that it could be changed so much that we're doubling the cost. Contracts are legally binding. You can't just change the amount of the cost without going to court and all that stuff. So I think we should do a special meeting next month and discuss this with all the players present.
If we can get them all present, that's not a bad idea.
Mr. Rybeck, this is Michelle. Just going back to Prakash Parab. Can Mr. Washington see if he's available, just to get him in?
Mr. Washington? I can't get him. Mr. Washington?
Mr. Board President, we have Parash Parab.
All right, I'll let him.
Hello, Steve. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm sorry you had problems there, Prakash.
Anyway, thank you anyway. I sent a chat. Anyway, thank you. Just my comments again. The demographers report came in January when the economy was growing well. And it assumes that we are going to have 2,800 residentials built in 4 years. Okay, that is a fact. That is there on the demographic report. So take that into reality, into consideration, okay? Because that's not going to happen, I think so. The second point is, if Dr. Alwich says that with 16 classes, she is satisfied with the high school, I'll take her word. But I don't want to hear, again, that school is overcrowded from the parents, okay? Take that into consideration. Thirdly, I agree with Plan B because there is no new construction at new site and added administration, okay? So Plan B is spread out throughout expansion of existing schools all across and takes care of the apple cart. So I like Plan B. Only thing is, as discussion went on very well, the modular construction, let them come and do the presentation and let us have a cost breakdown. That is my request. And let us not push it too ahead. I think if we are in something like $70 million ball range, then it will fly. And I think, Dr. Alwich, this plan includes all the computer systems and all the equipment, all needed, all across. I think so. If that is true, you have to state that this is not just a construction. It includes all the needs the students need, from technology to everything. So that should be made clear. So thanks for allowing me. I don't want to take time. If someone can comment on my what I said, I'll appreciate. Thank you, Steve.
Okay, you're welcome. Dr. Alvick or Mr. Gorski, you want to comment on any of what Prakash brought up?
I'm not sure he had any questions other than what does the cost include. The referendum does include the furniture and it includes the technology, correct, Mr. Gorski?
Yes, Doctor. It would include all the items needed to open school. And some of them may be considered a supply similar item like technology needs, hardware, but it would be an item that you could include in the referendum. We did put language in there previously to allow the upfront initial purchase so that you can open school as a complete school. It would not include operational costs, however, like salaries and utilities and things like that.
Okay, I certainly want to thank Dr. Alvick.
Steve, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think you just opened up the public comment all over again, which I appreciate. I think everybody needs to be heard. I'm seeing another hand up. I don't know if Reggie Washington picked it up or not, but more hands are coming up now. I see another one come up just now.
We're going to have another public forum. I did it because I understand Prakash is waiting, but I think we're done with that now. There's another public forum for agenda items only. They can speak then. I just want to ask board members, I think what I'm hearing, and please raise your hand if I'm wrong, we want to hold off making a selection, although it seems that Plan B seems to be the favorite. We want to get some more information, and we also want to postpone the referendum, but we don't want to pick a date yet, and maybe have an extended time for the BG&T. I almost said the A, B, and C committee. I'm hearing too many plans. The BG&T committee. Am I correct? Anybody?
I agree with that, Mr. Ryback.
Okay, so then there's no need to make any motions. That's what we'll proceed with.
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Mayo.
Is a month enough for the administration to get together everything they need to get together? I mean, we're in a very stressful time, and
I know, my feeling is that we left it open, so they know that this is what we want to have done. They'll start working at it, and then they'll give us something that's more realistic for a meeting. It's silly to have a meeting if we can't have all the information.
Okay,
And we
We
don't
will
have
do the best
the
we can.
end game date, so.
okay. All right,
So-
thank you.
Okay, so now we can move on to committee reports. Any committee chair would like to report?
I have a committee report.
And I'm sorry, I want to thank the administration. I was beginning to thank them. Thank you all for your hard work. This has been a very daunting task, but I think that when we're done, I think the district will benefit. Okay, Mr. Mayo, did you want to report on curriculum?
Yes, we had a curriculum meeting today. We reviewed items, instrumental music curriculum, grades 7 to 8, textbook adoption for grade 5 social studies, and clubs and athletics. We were not able to review physical education and Falcon Pals because Mr. Byer was not able to get into the meeting. The curriculum document, physical education and Falcon Pals. Currently, our unified programs at Monroe Township High School are innovative, rewarding, and productive. Nope, sorry, that was the one we did not do. Even though I have my notes, I apologize. Instrumental music, grades 7 and 8. The 7th and 8th grade instrumental music band course is a concept and performance elective at the Monroe Township Middle School. The 7th and 8th grade bands are non-auditioned ensembles. There are no prerequisites for these courses. Classes are to be arranged by instrument family in order to fully optimize the vertical teaching model and to provide a more personalized, intimate approach to rehearsals and lessons. Content delivery emphasizes and encourages an accelerated pathway to proficiency. Topics addressed will include essential music concepts such as scales and sight reading, ensemble development, techniques, listening, blending, and balance skills, and chamber music opportunities to strengthen musical independence. What was really interesting about this document, it's the first curriculum document that contains a contingency plan for virtual teaching. It plans for each unit. There are plans for each unit with links to resources specifically designed for virtual teaching, their instruction on how to teach virtually, and currently they are conducting digital rehearsals during this remote learning time. So I thought that was really interesting. Our next thing that we talked about was the grade 5 textbook adoption. Grade 5 textbook adoption is for social studies. We're getting a new textbook. They had a rigorous selection process and decided upon the textbook Impact Social Studies from McGraw-Hill Publishing. This text provides for alignment of content within the current social studies framework. There are robust grade level curriculum connections within the text. Inquiry is a large component of this program, fostering critical thinking skills for learners. There is also an Explorer magazine that is part of the series that allows for students to delve further into content and work towards a deeper understanding of the essential questions. This textbook offers a digital component, which will be the main method of student interaction. This series comes with a robust teacher resource, including digital supports, as well as a teacher resource center. We also talked about clubs and athletics. Clubs are still meeting, which was actually news to me and great to hear. A minimum of 5 meetings has been scheduled since we've been doing remote learning. 2 meetings in April and March, 2 in May, and 1 in June. Students are really interacting with their interests. Some of the things they are doing is the Health and Occupation Students of America started a newsletter and are writing thank yous to healthcare workers. Girl Up members will be participating in a virtual 5K walk on May 23rd to raise money to support victims of domestic violence. The African American Club are using Google Meet to hold discussion sessions. Some of the topics they have covered are school-related issues, such as how they are coping with remote learning and and positive support for each other during this time. They're also reviewing current events, stories, and incidences in the news and shows on African Americans, such as the Netflix movie on Madam C.J. Walker. And they also review historical achievements on African Americans. And that was all.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. DeMayo?
Yeah, what was the book, The Impact Social Studies, and who's the publisher?
Impact Social Studies from McGraw-Hill.
Okay, good, thanks.
And what was really interesting about this book, Michelle, since you brought it up when we were talking about the testing, it's not just social studies, but it ties in mathematics and science also. So, you know, if they're talking about Washington Crossing, Delaware, and they talk about the weather, they can bring in a weather theme or a weather topic to talk about. So it really covers different areas.
That sounds interesting. Thank you.
Anyone else? Question for Mr. Mayo? Just call out because I don't see everybody. Okay, not seeing anyone. Is any other committee chair wanting to report?
Mr. Ryback, it's Rupa. I have a report.
Go ahead, Rupa.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. The policy committee met last Wednesday, and we reviewed 2 policies and our education piece. The policy committee has moved both policies forward for first reading on tonight's agenda. So the first policy we reviewed was 0145 board member resignation bylaw. So this policy was brought to the chair of the policy committee by the board attorney. The revision to board bylaw 0145 is recommended by the policy committee in view of a recent decision by the Commissioner of Education. In the matter entitled Antoine versus Board of Education on the Borough of Roselle, Union County, the Commissioner of Education affirmed the initial decision by an administrative law judge, which invalidated a Board of Education's policy. The policy under review included the same language that is found in the board's bylaw 0145 regarding the removal of a board member. The commissioner explained that the applicable statute does not limit missed meetings to regular meetings, and the board's policy cannot override the authority afforded to it by statute. Thus, the recommended revision to the board's bylaw 0145 is to strike out the word regular from the pertinent sentence in this bylaw to ensure that the board bylaw 0145 is now in compliance with the state law. The second policy that we reviewed is policy 5330 and the regulation 5330, administration of medication. And this policy was reviewed by the school district nurses. So I just want to give you some information about what's changed in the policy and why it was revised. This requires the Board of Education to permit self-medication by a student for adrenal insufficiency in addition to other health issues currently in the law, such as asthma, other potential life-threatening illnesses, or a life-threatening allergic reaction. This requires a policy for the administration of hydrocortisone sodium succinate for adrenal insufficiency and designates the school nurse and others to administer the medication. This also requires the New Jersey Department of Education and Department of Health to develop guidelines for school districts to develop a policy for the emergency administration of hydrocortisone sodium succinate. Also, the New Jersey DOE guidelines are not yet available, but the statute was approved in May 2019 with a September 2019 effective date. So Strauss Esme did not want to wait for the guidelines to be published to update policy and regulation guide 5330. The new statute addresses the administration of hydrocortisone sodium succinate in a similar manner as the statutes and administrative code addresses administration of epinephrine. Therefore, the policy and the regulation guides have been revised to align with the new statutes for the administration of this medication. The biggest issue regarding these new statutes is the school nurse or another properly trained staff member must be available on site at the school and at school-sponsored functions in the event a student needs to have hydrocortisone sodium succinate administered. This is similar to the epinephrine law, and school districts may want to have the same staff member trained to administer epinephrine also be trained in the administrating of this medication. These guides will be updated if the NJDOE guidelines requires revisions. Policy and Reg Guides 5330 are mandated, and both must be adopted by the board. In addition, the school nurse may not be referenced in some areas of the policy and regulation guides where the nurse is routinely involved. This is because the statute specifically places responsibility on the Board of Education or superintendent. Therefore, these guides use board or superintendent as indicated in the statute, but add or designee of which the school nurse can be the designee. So both these policies, the policy guide 5330 is mandated and the regulation guide 5330 is mandated. And then the last piece, as we've been doing in our past meetings, we continue to educate the community through policy. So tonight's topic that I'll be sharing information on is the board superintendent relationship. This information, as with others, has been found in many of the communications and training through school boards. So I'm just going to read you some information about this. To ensure that the board and the superintendent, in carrying out their respective duties, maintain the best relationship, each partner follows some basic guidelines. For the board, these are not taking actions without consulting the superintendent and getting his or her recommendations. 2, recognizing the superintendent as the district's education leader and listening to him or her as such. 3, not confusing the role of setting policy for the district with that of running the schools. And 4, not surprising the superintendent. And the guidelines for the superintendent working with the board, they are 1, keeping the board fully informed at all times. 2, implementing policies of the board in the most effective and efficient manner and evaluating the results. 3, recognizing the board as the final authority in the school district and conveying that recognition to the rest of the staff. And 4, not surprising the board. In carrying out their separate responsibilities cooperatively, the board and the chief school administrator aid each other in the effective management of the school system. And, I know we've said this in the past before, a good way to remember the roles and the responsibilities is the board is the what, creates the policy, and the superintendent and administration determines how the policy will be administered. So that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Siegel? Not seeing any.
Steve, I have one. Policy bylaw 0145. I know there was a discussion in the removal of the word regular meeting. Was there a discussion in policy about what that means? Because now it's more broad. And who, because it says if a board member misses 3 consecutive meetings, it used to be 3 consecutive regular meetings. So what does it mean now to say that if they miss 3 consecutive meetings?
You mean like a committee meeting also? Is that what you're talking about?
Is that, yeah?
No, I'm asking you. Is that what you mean?
That's the question.
Okay. I don't.
Yeah. From my understanding was they were striking out that word because it's against the law to do that. But from what I know, when we all miss meetings, if we need to miss a meeting, we have to follow our process and make sure we let the board secretary know that someone else, for committee meetings, we have alternates, right? So I think that's the way I understood.
So you mean three committee meetings missed are also counted in that?
Mr. Ryback?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Gorski. You might have the answer.
From going over this policy previously, I believe it just pertains to board meetings, the distinguishment being a regular scheduled meeting and a special meeting,
right?
Like the last superintendent evaluation.
I agree. That's what I was going to say. I don't think it refers to committee meetings. It's just regular.
No. And I did speak to Mary about that. So I guess it wasn't made clear in policy, but can we add that to the minutes tonight so we know that it really meant like special meetings or regulars? I just want to be clear for everyone's sake and the public's.
Mr. Gorski, can we do that?
I have no objection.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Siegel? Okay, do we have any other committee chairs that want to see? Mr. Pelori? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Kalapanovic, you had a question?
You can go with Andy first.
Okay. Are you sure, Kathy?
Yes.
I'll be really quick. The Education Advocacy Committee did not have a meeting yet, but at the last meeting, we discussed about the letter writing campaign And we all agreed as a board that we need to send a letter from the general public about not supporting those bills that would result in giving the local governments an authority to withhold payments because that's what the state is looking to provide as a leverage or an incentive rather to the municipalities. Sorry, I got distracted. I just got something popped up. Apparently, Dr. Riplet is going to Kean University as the president. So talk about things changing rapidly. So I do have a resolution that I would like to put out for the board to vote on today. The letter is written and it is being reviewed by the board attorney. So I'm going to read a resolution for support from the board. Here it goes. Whereas the Education Advocacy Committee has stayed abreast of current legislative developments pertaining to school districts, specifically those affecting school aid and municipal tax revenue. And whereas the current version of bills S2392/83969, so please note that the bill numbers have changed now, which allows municipalities to extend/delay the dates of payments of taxes by a municipality to the school districts, is currently pending in the legislation. And whereas the state budget resources are in an uncertain state in view of the COVID-19 pandemic and the unclear federal stimulus package payments that may be provided to the state. And whereas there is a concern that there may be a reduction in the state aid award notification to the school districts. Now, therefore, be it resolved that members of the Monroe Township Board of Education authorize and participate in community letter writing campaign to lobby in the interest of school districts to vigorously oppose any proposed legislation that would jeopardize the revenue stream to the school districts.
Second.
Okay, any questions, comments? Okay, we could vote. Mr. Gorski, you want to take a roll call vote on this?
Mrs. DeMayo,
Yes.
Mrs. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Tofano,
Yes.
Mr. Rutsky,
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Arminio,
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella,
Yes.
Mr. Pelori,
Yes.
Mr. Nicotinsky,
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz,
Yes.
and Mr. Ryback.
Yes.
Board President, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pelori.
Thank you, Steve. There's one other small item that I want to bring it to the board's attention as well as a part of the Education Advocacy Committee. The governor is continuing to tweet and put on the Facebook that as of this Monday, there's about $280 million available to school districts to compensate them for the cost incurred to go from in-face learning to virtual learning. I believe the applications are open now, so I just want to make sure. We've been talking about this at the last few meetings, so I assume that Mr. Gorski is keeping tabs on it, and we're going to go put an application for that. Thank you.
Mr. Ryback.
Yes, sure, go ahead.
In that regard, Dr. Alvick, Mrs. Allen, Dr. Lehman and I have accumulated the costs, and the submission deadline is June 1st, but that's on it's on my project at least to begin that tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Mr. President.
Koloponowicz, thank you, Mr. Pelori. Ms. Koloponowicz?
Okay, I have a personnel report. We had a personnel meeting last Wednesday, May 6th, and one of the items that we discussed was the contracts for 3 district administrators that are on the agenda for this evening's board meeting. The first one is for the business administrator, Michael Gorski. It's a 1-year contract and it's the same as last year with a 0% increase, 0% salary increase.
Ms. Koloponowicz, I'm sorry, I have to, Dr. Alvick, was there a change there in the
There is
agenda?
a change.
We might
Hold on. Letter U is going to be pulled from the agenda. Letter U personnel will be pulled from the agenda tonight, pending legal opinion.
I just wanted to, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I thought that was pertinent before you.
Happened right before the meeting, Mrs. Koloponowicz.
Okay, I did not know that. Okay, the second contract is for the assistant superintendent, Dr. Adam Lehman. His contract is also the same as last year with also a 0% salary increase. These contracts, both of these contracts were recommended by the superintendent for approval at this evening's meeting. Should be noted that neither of the two administrators requested a salary increase in light of the tough times that we are living in, and board members have received a copy of these contracts for their review. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Kalapanowicz? Okay, any other committee?
Mr. Ryback.
I'm sorry, Ms. Arminio.
Yeah, okay. Ms. Kalapanowicz, you mentioned that there were no salary increases, but there were changes in letter, I believe, letter S. That there were additional requests for.
There was a one request for 5 additional vacation days.
Okay, so 5 additional vacation days is a cost increase.
I said salary increase.
Okay, so, all right, but there is a value to 5 additional vacation days if they're not used, correct?
I believe there are, but I also know that Mr. Gorski takes a lot of his vacation days. He works during a lot of his vacation.
That's not the question. The question is that there's an additional 5 days, which has a value. Okay, and the other one, is there a change in, like the similar chapter 78, health insurance premium?
I believe we were told at the personnel meeting that both contracts are the same as last year.
And you're saying that there's no change in contribution to premium, healthcare premium?
No.
Correct. Okay, so that hasn't changed. So the only change is the addition of the request for 5 more vacation days. But again, that has a dollar value, doesn't it?
Only if he doesn't use them.
Okay, well, we don't know that. Okay, thank you.
Any other question? Okay, any other committee chair? Yes. I just said any other committee chair. Absolutely, Paul, you got it.
Okay, we had our finance meeting also last Wednesday on the 6th, and we started off with Falcon Care ECE, and the update for this year, unfortunately, with those services being closed middle of March when the shutdown started, and obviously not projected, not going to be open through year end. So as of now, through March, we had roughly a $283,000 profit. We owe some refunds back for tuition paid that will not be used. So we're going to have to issue about $40,000 in refunds to families. So it takes us to about a $240,000 profit for those two combined, which is nice. But let's remember, the last few years, that's about half of what we've had as projected profits. And again, that's money that we've moved over in the budget to help cover other expenses. So that will be one of the painful negative adjustments to the district shutting down. While the last few meetings, we've been talking about where are we saving money? Is it the utilities? Is it the diesel fuel, what have you? And while that was nice that we found we were saving some money in some places, unfortunately, this is an area where we're definitely taking a hit to our budget in the $200,000+ range. So I just wanted to be clear about that. It's a combination of, we had 28 less students or children participating in the programs. That, and again, the shutdown for 3.5 months while still paying salaries nets out that difference in profit, about 50% from previous couple of years. So we moved on to talk about extraordinary aid. Extraordinary aid is with regards to special education students, correct? Thank you, Steve. I just spaced out for a second. So after a lot of work and from Mrs. Allen in completing and then submitting the applications. I'm looking 29 students. This goes back to the 18-19 school year. 29 students. We are receiving $504,000 in extraordinary aid. And just as a note on that, it's to cover 75% of the expense greater than $55,000 for special ed students that we send out of district, or $40,000 that we spend for students in district. So it's greater than those amounts, and then it's roughly 75% of that. And when all was said and done, it's about $504,000 coming in aid.
Paul, if I might, on extraordinary ed, special ed, I was going to mention this later on in my report, but it's pertinent now. The government has been talking before this pandemic about funding 100% of extraordinary special aid, and that's not going to be the case.
I suspect not.
Yes, that's not happening.
I suspect not. And as a matter of fact, that takes me to the next part of the finance meeting notes. Was we talked about the budget update and where are we, what to expect, and Mr. Gorski had a conversation with the county business administrator, who suggested that we prepare for a 10 to 20% cut in the state aid when it actually becomes official or when we get in August. So in light of that, as we wait to see what those numbers really do come in at, we started discussing temporary borrowing facilities and where would we where could we fill that void, and how do we handle that? And so while of course we'll be looking into a list of non-essential or non-instructional programs that would have the least impact across the district, we're going to be working on a list of those with regards to approximate savings. But we'd like to leave that as a last resort. So first and foremost, if the state just cuts our funding, and if we need to in an emergency, we do have $2 million roughly in a legitimate reserve account that in an emergency, such as state aid being cut or withheld, we are allowed, with permission, we can then tap that reserve fund. So that's one option. Second option would be these what's called revenue anticipation notes. And it's basically a short-term bond that we float, similar to the municipal bonds we restructured a few months ago. It's a process similar to that. There's an expense to it because you got to go through bond counsel. But you're then borrowing X number of dollars at currently pretty low interest rates for just a short amount of time as an emergency to sort of fill a gap. So we have the reserve account if we have to. We have the revenue anticipation notes. If we have to, there's an expense to that. And then, of course, we have cutting of programs, which we're going to try to leave as a last resort, of course. I believe that concludes my finance notes.
Thank you, Mr. Rutsky. Any board member have a question for Mr. Rutsky? Okay, I'm not hearing anybody. So did I miss anyone, or did anyone else? Okay, so we close committee reports, and now we'll go to the public forum for agenda items only. I'm going to ask the public who want to participate to please hit that raise your hand, tap that raise your hand so that Mr. Washington knows that you want to participate. Please state your name and address, and you'll have 4 minutes. Mr. Washington, we can start now.
Mr. Board President, we still have some hands that were left over from the first public.
It's an agenda item, and they can ask. Sure.
Mr. Board President, I think these hands were left up. I don't think that they have a question. We need to lower their hands first and then raise them.
Okay, when you're finished being called on, please lower your hand. Obviously, you have to raise it. If you want to speak, lower it after you finish. So do we have anyone that's wanting to speak to the agenda?
Mr. Board President, you have Piyush Patel.
Okay, Mr. Patel.
Hello, this is
Hello.
Piyush. Yeah, this is Piyush Patel, Violet Code 51. How are you, Steve?
Welcome, welcome. I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you for what you guys are doing. I have only one concern. I was on ad hoc committee and I reiterate that time also. We are thinking about the future who are not existed, but we have to make sure our high schools are at capacity and, after 5 years also, because we are the current taxpayers and we are the voters. So you guys have to think like whatever plan you choose, like, modular, brick and mortar, but you have to think about the high school also. Like, adequate number of high school classes has to be there to pass any referendum.
Okay. Well, high school's certainly in the plan, and we're doing the best we can considering the needs of the schools and the needs of the taxpayers.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Next person, Mr. Washington.
Mr. Board President, you have Pradeep Malam.
Okay. Pradeep.
Correction. Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, this is Pradeep for Jake Place.
Yes.
Yeah. So I request the board not to take in the negative way that what I talked about, like Jamesburg representative. I know Paul is a great guy. He has a great finance knowledge and everything. He is contributing a lot to our district as well. He is doing a double duty. My problem is with like he is voting on so many things that we really don't need. For example, in the last board meeting, he voted on the truck trafficking issue. It is nothing. It has nothing to do with the Jamesburg students or the or any concerns to the Jamesburg students, because this is related to 5th and 6th grade, and no Jamesburg students are coming to 5th and 6th grades if at all we are considering Applegarth site. So for the last 15 meetings, I've been observing there is a specifically noted, there is a notes at the end of each board meeting agenda section where there is on which topics he can vote and he cannot vote. But like these examples, I have around 40 examples in the last 15 meetings that I followed, that he's been called for voting on every aspect and every resolution that you guys are doing.
And that's,
I want that.
I'm going to answer you because you alluded to that before. First of all, I thank you for saying that the nice things about Mr. Rutsky. He does a fantastic job here for us, and he's very dedicated to Monroe. But the law has changed in the past few years and allows the Jamesburg rep to vote on almost everything, and all the things that he votes on is well in advance.
Okay, can you explain me? Okay, I gave you one example. Can you explain me why he can vote on that one?
Pradeep, when I'm finished, you could talk. Let me talk first. Let me finish. I'm trying not to interrupt you. He looks at the agenda, and if there's something he can't vote on, he's advised of that in advance. So you need to know that. So everything he votes on is absolutely legal, and what can I say? It's his right to do that, and we welcome that.
Okay, I gave you an example. Can you explain me like how he can vote on that particular scenario?
Which example again? Refresh my memory.
Refresh your memory. Okay. Regarding in the last board meeting, he voted on the truck trafficking around writing a letter to the mayor around truck trafficking around Applegarth and Station Road.
Yeah, so that affects the school system, of which is his.
Yeah, but you are not considering their high school. You are considering only 5th and 6th grade, and 5th and 6th grade, Jamesburg is not sending the kids.
I think that it affects the entire school system. That's how we're looking at it. And
every penny that we are spending in the whole BOE or in the district is going to affect the entire school system. So why do you need to have a special note section, and then you can vote and list out the things that
very few things. There are very few things, and I said this, and this is where I'm going to leave it, and we'll move on. There's very few things he's advised not to vote on. It's done in advance. It's looked at by our attorney, and everything he votes on is his legal right. I'm not an attorney, but what I answered you is the best I could do. Any more than that, you can contact the district. But we're going to move on. Mr. Washington, next person, please.
Sir, Mr. Board President. Ghazala Bahora.
Sure. Ghazala, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Washington. Thank you, Mr. Ryback. This is Ghazala Mora, 1 Miko Drive. I wanted to talk about the business administrator's contract renewal. Last year when this happened, he was retroactively paid an increase in salary. It was the same time, and the reason I remember it so clearly is because it was the same time that we were debating cutting buses for elementary school kids. So it had really upset me a lot as a taxpayer that we were choosing to, spike up the salary of the administrator while we were also considering cutting buses for elementary school kids. So the point that I'm trying to come to is that at that time when we discussed the raise so much, what had come up was that there was a pending ethics violation filed with the state for Mr. Gorski. And I'm not sure what has been the outcome of this. And I would like to, as a taxpayer, know if there has been a resolution to that pending violation, and are all the board members who are going to vote on the contract aware of all the details of that complaint and the outcome before they're asked to vote on it?
So I have to say, I believe that's a personnel matter, and we cannot comment on that.
So I cannot be told as a taxpayer whether or not all the board members will be made aware of that, the status of that, violation, which is filed with the state. So it's got to be a public record for it.
I don't feel comfortable commenting on that because it's a personnel matter. So I'd rather not do that.
So there is no way I can get an answer to that question, Mr. Ryback?
Not on a personnel matter, no.
Okay, even if I did an Oprah on it, would I need to do an Oprah, something like that?
No, not even with an Oprah. It's personnel. We can't divulge that kind of information.
All right, I will do my research. Thank you, Mr. Ryback.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mr. Board President, we have Christine Pucciarelli.
Okay, Ms. Cucciarelli, welcome. Hello?
I believe her hand is up from before.
Okay, Mr. Board President, we'll move on to C. Skirby.
Okay, Ms. Skirby.
Yes, hello, Chrissy Skirby, 21 Preakness Drive. I just wanted to make some comments of the previous caller, Salabora. I do remember being discussed as well, a pending ethics violation. And while you may not be able to comment on it, I hope the Personnel Committee discussed that when they were going through his contract. And I know you're going to tell me, you can't let me know, but I hope those board members that are on that committee were informed of this before putting this forth tonight. I also want to just make a comment about the increase in the vacation days. That is technically a raise, and it does have a cash value. I do agree with Ms. Arminio on that. And in this economic climate, we do need to be very cognizant of what we're doing, and giving a raise during this time to an already very highly paid position of BA, it really is not going to sit right with the public, in my opinion. I think, we're talking about raising tuition for Falcon Care and the ECE while they've already had a decreased enrollment this year. And, you're raising the tuition for the parents in that program during this economic climate. We're in the middle of a crisis in our world. And now we're going to be increasing that tuition. And we're also increasing the iPad fees and charging fees to pay online. I'm just a little concerned with what I see going on right now. We're increasing fees to parents, and we're still pushing through, raises. However, which way you want to look at it, a raise is a raise. Anything you get more from one year to another is an increase. It's a raise, and there is a monetary value. So I find it really interesting that the way it was worded, that his contract stayed the same. It didn't. If you made an increase in vacation days, that's new to the contract. And I think it was very misleading the way that it was put forward tonight. And that just makes me very sad as a taxpayer.
Okay. Mr. Washington, anyone else?
Mr. President, you have Beth DePiero.
Can't hear you, Mr. Washington.
Mr. Board President, you have Beth DePiero.
Oh, okay. Beth.
Mr. Board President, she has a lot of background noise.
I can hear that. I can't hear her.
Mr. Board President, you have Michael Oleski.
Okay, Michael, go ahead.
Dave, hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, just two follow-up items from the previous conversation with regard to the referendum. I guess, let's see here. Just checking my notes here. Yes, I just want to make sure that over these coming months, as some additional work gets done, I guess with regard to looking at modular, that at least 2 or 3 other items of interest might be pursued. One, the what remaining life assessment, you might call it, art school. I guess to some extent, this is probably going to be a surprise to quite a few residents around the town, particularly the people that don't have kids, of course, in school, that the Apple Court School might be in as bad a condition as it is. And certainly if there's any kind of a written report that's been prepared of the outstanding issues with regard to the school, to be able to demonstrate to the public that a new school, in fact, is needed, and that a simple renovation won't make do. And obviously, if that hasn't been done, maybe at some low-cost study or analysis of that sort could be done, because my guess is we're going to hear that come up somewhere down the road. I guess one other comment I wanted to make, again, over these coming weeks, maybe months as well, and maybe Andy Pluri might have a comment or two. I know I've read a number of times about the New Jersey Schools Development Authority using that maybe not so new, but different contracting technique, design build, for quite a few of their latest contracts that they themselves have gone out for. I know there's some claims on the School Development Authority website that they've seen some cost reductions. Just want to make sure that a design build type contracting strategy, maybe other strategies of that sort that are somewhat innovative, could be looked at, considered, thought about, again, in advance of when the time comes that we'll need to progress. That's it.
Thank you, Michael. Anyone else from the public? Mr. Washington.
Mr. Board President, there are no other hands raised.
Okay, since hands are raised, we can close the public forum and we can move to the Assistant Superintendent's report. Dr. Lehman, it's all yours.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to make a nice brief one because we've had quite a robust agenda today. I was just going to highlight a few things from some of our high school clubs that are continuing to run. So we have the Student Council. We spoke last time a little bit about a time capsule. So student councils work together with other NPHS clubs so that students could submit contributions to a time capsule. This time capsule will allow students and staff to step back from our complicated and overwhelming situation, communicate with future generations what it was like to live through this COVID-19 pandemic of 2020. Students are able to communicate with future generations in a variety of ways. So they're looking for like letters, diary entries, poems, songs, artwork, even newspaper articles. Anything that could kind of represent what we're going through now. Really a neat kind of project. A quick little update. Last board meeting, the board authorized a little bit of funding to put a plaque together to memorialize the class of 2020. I asked Dr. Higgins to kind of work with the class advisors and any relevant staff, that includes Mr. Miralda, to accomplish this project. So they've been meeting, and they're going to come up with some different ideas, and then I'll kind of report back with what they're thinking, and we can kind of share with what would be meaningful to the class of 2020. Maybe it's something slightly different than a plaque. There's a lot of things they've been tossing around, but they're very appreciative of your thoughtfulness for them, and they want to make sure it's something that would be more for them, and also something that they can relate to and be interested in, and help them get through this difficult situation. And finally, I wanted to highlight some of our professional development. We have basically been running professional development nonstop. The tech department, our PD department have been doing amazing work. One thing we decided to do and take advantage of the virtual environment is run a virtual sheltered instruction cohort. So some of our staff, in preparation for next year as our English language learners population grows, we provide training that allows us to support them in strategies and how to address their needs, oftentimes their unique needs. So we're running a cohort. It's all online. It's modules that are getting rolled out weekly, and it's something that historically we've done and oftentimes had to pull teachers out of the classroom for. Now we're utilizing the professional development time we have in the afternoons, or some of these modules can be done whenever the teachers have time, free time in the evening or whatever. And it's a really neat project, and we hope to even kind of continue to roll this as we get back to a more traditional environment. Another piece of training we did some co-teaching in the middle school. We did an Ask My Class, revisiting AI in the classroom training. We've offered unpacking Google Chrome extensions for special education and struggling learners. We've had several social emotional learning opportunities. The middle school is running something specific for their staff. We've also had some all-staff SEL trainings, and we've done that through Panorama, which is one of the companies we've worked with in terms of creating surveys and leveraging their tools and resources throughout the year. We've done virtual learning, blending career-ready practices with teaching, learning, and professional collaboration, K-12. That's a Schoology-related PD. Mystery Science K-5, that's a science-specific elementary resource we've supported the teachers on in this virtual environment. We've done a lot of revision trainings. We've done specific Google Meet trainings for different cohorts of staff, specifically related services, as we began to allow to do some teletherapy and some remote service providing. We targeted professionals so we could have a foundation in how to utilize these tools to provide, whether it's speech or OT or PT, and kind of make an environment that would be the best that we can provide in this moment for all of our students and learners to help get through this COVID environment. This week, so this past Friday through this Friday, we're running a series of 4 either Google Meets or Zoom trainings. Some are middle school specific and some are district specific. We're supporting the staff in every way we can. They're extremely appreciative, and they've been doing an amazing job. Like I said, our trainers, our technology department, and our staff, our teaching staff, administrative team, just really stepped up to the plate. We're continuing to grow. We're learning from our mistakes. We're leveraging resources, finding resources, making steps every day. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Lehman. Any questions for Dr. Lehman from the board members?
I have one, please.
Yes, Ms. Laminio.
And I don't know if it's been in the weekly confidentials or if I missed anything. Has there been any discussion as to graduation ceremonies?
Yes, that's an ongoing discussion. There was breaking news over the weekend, and kind of we'll have to make some adjustments on the fly, but that's something that Dr. Higgins, as well as all the elementary principals, are working on. We have several milestones along the way, not the least of which is the high school graduation, but we also have some moving up ceremonies for 8th grade. We have 5th grade moving up ceremonies, so we'll make sure we do our due diligence, and the principals have plan A's, plan B's, plan C's. And as we say, the news changes and kind of guides what we're allowed to do. And like I said, this weekend we had a wrench thrown in some of our initial plans. But we will move forward, and we're collaborating with staff, and we're going to do everything we can to give every student an experience that they can hopefully remember.
Thank you.
That's good to hear. Thank you. Okay, I guess we can move to the superintendent's report. Dr. Alvick.
Okay, Mr. Ryback. So on tonight's agenda, we have 3 retirements that I'd like to acknowledge. So Mrs. Susan Green Nowacek has been a teacher at Mill Lake School. She's been in the district for 14 years, and she is retiring at the end of this school year. Mrs. Robin Silverman, who has also been teaching in our district for 26 years. She was a classroom teacher, and then for about the last 15 years, I guess it's been, she's been the reading specialist at Mill Lake School. And Mr. Theodore Pulaski, who is our industrial arts high school teacher, has been in our district for 12 years. So I just want to thank them for their many years of service to our students of Monroe Township.
Lee Chen has joined the meeting.
So we will be recognizing, normally we invite our retirees to our June board meeting, and obviously we'll be doing a virtual meeting in June again. So I am working on some type of a recognition for those staff members who are retiring for June. So be on the lookout for that, since we can't recognize them in person. You know, I know this is the May meeting where normally we're recognizing our district teachers of the year and educational services professionals. Usually we have that wonderful dinner celebration from our culinary arts students. Obviously we were not able to do that at this time. We're hoping to just postpone it to when we can do it. So I want to congratulate our staff members who are receiving this award. We're hoping to hold the celebration at a later date.
That's a great night. We're going to miss that.
Yeah, it really is. On the agenda this evening, it are both this year's district calendar and next year's district calendar, because there is an update to each of them. For this year's calendar, we're adding our last unused snow day to the Friday of Memorial Day weekend. And for next year's calendar, the change is actually in the date of the junior prom. We had put it on the first Friday in June, but we found out that SATs were going to be held that Saturday. So we are actually moving the junior prom to the week before that. So I'm sorry, not June. In the first week of April, we're moving it to the last weekend, the last Friday in March. So just so everyone knows, we're moving that date because of SATs. So those are the 2 changes for that. And as everyone knows, Governor Murphy has closed schools through the end of the school year. That announcement was made, I think, about a week ago. So we're working closely with our building administrators, as Dr. Lehman mentioned, on some of those milestones, but also on how do we close out our schools for the year? How do we collect textbooks? How do we make sure students and staff get their personal belongings back out of the school? So we are working on those plans now. And each school will communicate those plans out to the parents once they're finalized. So that moves us to the personnel agenda. And again, as I mentioned during committee reports, we are going to be pooling letter U from personnel pending legal opinion. So, Mr. Board President, it's recommended that the board approve the attached personnel items A through X as an X-ray, with the exception of U by roll call.
Can someone move it?
I'll move it. This is Paul.
Okay, second?
I'll second it.
Alpanowitz. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Rybeck, this is Michelle Arminio.
Sure, go ahead.
In the past, when we talked about, I believe, the contracts for our professionals, we used to go into closed session to discuss them before the vote. Is there a reason why we're not doing that? I believe that's what we've done in the past. You can correct me if I'm mistaken.
Recall doing that. I remember it goes to the personnel committee and it goes right to the board. We do not show for that.
I would have preferred certainly to have a closed session to discuss the contracts. They're rather, complicated, and they're.
It's not what we do.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Question, we can have a vote?
President.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yes, I'm sorry.
We weren't told anything about any ethics issues with the BA. And I've been on the personnel committee and we weren't told anything. So I think we need to table S and discuss that in closed session.
I don't think that's, I don't think that's something that we need to do. I can't comment on it now, but I don't think, considering what we know, I don't think that's something that we need to do. Dr. Alvick, you have any opinion on that? I know we're not lawyers, but.
I think if something's on the table, we have to vote on it, whether it's to be tabled or not.
I think if he made a motion, if he's going to make a motion, we would have to
table.
Yeah, I mean, we weren't told anything, so it's news to me.
I believe, Kathy, that that's an issue that doesn't come back to the board. I think that ends up being a legal issue and not a board issue.
That's what I think, yeah.
Yeah.
The board president, Steve, can I ask a question? Are there charges, or is it actually a proven that there's something wrong?
Yeah,
okay, all right. Got it. You can't discuss it.
That's the thing. I think we need to table that and discuss that and close.
It's not a discussion for the board, Audie. That's something that's a legal issue that doesn't, it's out of our hand.
We're voting on a contract right now. I think we need to know what's going on.
I have a question.
Who has a question?
I have a question, Pete.
Please, go ahead.
Why is it that we have to table you unexpectedly for legal issues, but we can't table S for the same issues that need to be discussed, whether it be by
not the same issue
or by the board itself?
Steve, I'm going to make a motion to table this right now.
Okay, let's vote on the motion.
Mr. President?
We have a second, the
We
motion.
have a motion to table S. It's a priority motion. Motion made by Mr. Nicotinsky.
Okay.
And seconded by anyone?
Who wants to?
Michelle,
Michelle, seconds.
Mrs. Arminio seconded. So we're going to go to a vote now to table S. Mrs. DeMayo.
No.
Mrs. Koloponowicz.
No.
Mr. Peluri.
No.
Mr. Tefano.
Yes.
Mr. Rutsky.
No.
Mr. Nicotinsky.
Yes.
Mrs. Siegel.
No.
Mrs. Arminio.
yes.
Mr. Chiarella.
I recuse myself.
Mr. Ryback.
No.
Board President, motion to table fails.
Go to the vote.
And Steve, after the vote, we could have commentary?
I don't think so.
No, not after the vote, no.
Steve, can I ask a question, please? This is to Dr. Alvick. I looked at the agenda, and I'm seeing a very long list of reappointment of teachers. I have never seen that before. At least I didn't pay attention. Any reason why we have such a long list, Dr. Alvick?
Every May, you'll see this on the agenda every May because it's our reappointment for our staff for next year.
I see. Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
And also, I'm sorry. And one more thing on the calendar, you still continuing to show for this school year, 4-hour school days. I think right now we are running actually 4-hour school days. So how does that impact?
It doesn't impact the 180-day requirement.
Okay. Mr.
Because
Gorski.
our teachers are actually still working more than that. They're not working 4-hour days.
Okay, thank you.
I think we have to vote on personnel. Are we ready to vote? We have a
Mr.
second.
Ryback, I'm going to take a roll call personnel items A through X, except for you. Mr. Tefano.
Yes on everything on S.
Mr. Rutsky.
Yes on everything. Thank you.
Mr. Chiarella.
Yes on everything, recuse myself on S.
Peluri.
You call me?
Yes, Mr. Peluri. How do you vote, sir?
I vote yes on everything.
Mr. Ryback.
Yes on everything.
Mrs. Siegel.
Yes on everything.
Mrs. DeMayo.
Yes on everything.
Mr. Nicotinsky.
Yes on everything except S. No on S.
Mrs. Armin.
Yes, except no on S.
Mrs. Koloponowicz.
Yes on everything.
Mr. Board President, motion passes.
Okay. We can move on now to board action, I believe.
Board action. So it is recommended that the Board of Ed approve the following items A through P as in Paul by roll call.
Okay, do I have a second on that? So moved, then do I have a second?
Yeah, I second it.
Okay, Mr. Pelori seconds it. Any questions?
I would just like, there's numbers on the, can you just tell me what page number we're starting at, Dr. Al?
It's 47.
That I have starts on page 47.
Okay, that's good. Yep, I got it.
7 and 48.
47 to 48, right.
Okay.
You have it, Ms. Arminia, you all set?
Yep, I printed out 106 pages unbeknownst to me.
Double-sided, I hope.
No, and I missed that one too. And then it came up double, so I ended up, I guess, doing 212. Somehow.
Okay, I believe we had a second on that. I believe we could vote.
Yes.
Mr. Ryback, who made the motion for board action items A through P?
I made the motion.
So noted. And Mr. Pelori seconded.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Would you like a roll call, sir?
Absolutely would.
Board action items A through P. Mrs. Kolpanowicz.
Yes.
Mr. Pelori.
Yes.
Mrs. DeMayo.
Yes, and abstain on M.
Abstain on M. Thank you. Mrs. Arminio.
Yeah, I'm going to abstain on yes for everything. I'm going to abstain on I, J, K, L, and M. Just because I'm not sure which ones are which.
Mrs. Arminio, I'm going to ask that you repeat that because I couldn't hear your abstention.
I'm going to abstain on I, J, K, L, and M. Well,
It's an alphabetical order too.
L and A M, correct? A and D?
I, J, K, L, M.
I through M, you said, right?
Correct.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes, except I'm abstaining on letter M.
Chiarella.
Yes.
Mr. Rutsky.
Yes.
Mr. Nicotinsky.
Yes on everything, recuse on L.
Mr. Tufano. Mr. Ryback.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, let's move to the business administrator's report and recommendations. Mr. Borski?
That concludes my report.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Mr. Board President and members of the Monroe Township Board of Education, it is recommended that board action items A through N, as in Nancy, be approved by consent roll call.
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Girella moved it, second by whom? Okay,
Mrs. DeMayo.
any questions, concerns?
I have a question about, can I ask a question about N resolution of the Monroe Township Board of Education authorizing rejection of bids? Was that in what you moved?
We're in the business administration.
Okay. Are we in that section?
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
We are.
So my question is, we are rejecting 3 bids. Are we going out to bid again for the same subject matter?
Mr. Chair?
Good.
That is correct. We are rebidding the bid because the 3 bids we received had material errors that could not be recommended to the board. Board council reviewed them and they had to be dismissed.
Okay, when, I don't know any of these people or anything, but are people allowed, once a bid is rejected, to resubmit a bid?
Yes, if they can correct the errors
Right.
and remove them, they can resubmit the bid, yes.
And does this, when we say go out to bid again, is this going to have the same advertisement and time as the last time?
Of course.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, can someone move it so we can vote on this?
Mr. Tufano.
Well, I think we need to move it and have a second to vote on it.
This is Paul. I'll move it.
Mr. Chiarella moved it and Mrs. DeMayo seconded the motion.
Okay, we had our questions ready. Let's vote.
Mr. Tufano. How do you vote, sir? Mr. Tufano.
Yes.
You vote yes, Correct. Mrs. DeMayo,
Yes.
Mrs. Arminio,
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella,
Yes.
Mrs. Siegel,
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz,
Yes.
Mr. Rutsky,
Yes.
Mr. Pelori,
Yes.
Mr. Nicotinsky,
Yes.
and Mr. Ryback. Board President, that concludes my board action items A through N. My report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gorski. Move to my report. This past Saturday, New Jersey School Board's Legislative Committee, we hosted a virtual meeting, and our guest speaker was Senator Sweeney. It was very, very interesting. He seemed to be very down to earth and realistic in whatever he was saying. Basically, I'm just going to give you a couple of highlights. Right now, it's impossible to predict what funding will look like. I think any one of us could have guessed that. He also said he felt that we should not count on any increase in state aid over last year. That's something else I think we thought was in the hopper, and looks like it might be coming out. On the bills now before the Senate and Assembly, and this affected what Mr. was mentioning with the letter. After this June, he will not support any bills that delay payment of tax revenues to school districts from the municipal government. That being said, he urges everyone to still reach out to all legislators to oppose any delay of tax revenue. He can't see, as we've been saying, how we could possibly pay bills if we're denied that tax revenue. And again, that would affect almost any district. So please, let's get that letter on the website, and hopefully residents will get that out.
I've already sent it to the webmaster.
Great, thank you. And as I mentioned before, full funding of extraordinary special education is on hold. Another thing that's interesting is finally he mentioned if a vaccine for the coronavirus is found, he feels inoculation should be made mandatory for schools. He stated that if any anti-vaccine parents should be able to have their children learn remotely. And that really was, I think, the highlights of what he was talking about, and we'll conclude my report. Any other Board of Education business? Any board member?
Hey, Steve, this is Paul.
Well, go ahead.
So I think I missed my window of opportunity earlier, I guess during personnel, to just speak to Dr. Lehman's contract, if I may.
Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you to him and say it's been so nice having him step into the role of assistant superintendent, and through the curriculum committee that I sit on. I see you do great work, and it's a pleasure to have you. And for you to take a 0% raise, very commendable given the current circumstances. So thank you for that. And then to Mr. Gorski, again, I'll say my opinion is to take a 0% raise, completely commendable. I absolutely appreciate that. Everything you do. For 5 extra vacation days, my friend, you've earned it, you deserve it, and I want you to use it in good health.
Thank you.
And as long as you use them, by the way, there is no cost to the district. It's not like we call in a substitute when you're away on vacation. So, and I don't even know the rules about retirement and unused vacation days. I think they put a cap on that. But nevertheless, use it in good health, and I'm happy for you.
Thank you, Mr. Rutsky. It is capped. And I've been serving this district for 20 years, which is much longer than most of the speakers or most of the folks that have commented at the meeting. And I appreciate the kind words.
Sure.
I don't have to justify my compensation. My work product does.
Your work speaks for itself, my friend.
Thank you.
Steve.
Is that Andy?
Yes, I'll make it really quick. I echo the same sentiment as Paul just did, but also recognize the fact that last week was actually the teachers' week, and I want to appreciate all the teachers. And I think Dr. Lehman, kind of gave all the training and that they're going through. That's excellent. I'm really glad to hear that, because just because we're doing everything virtual, the training should not stop. And I really commend both Dr. Alwick and Dr. Lehman for that. And I agree with Paul that Dr. Lehman really slid into the role very comfortably, and he's doing a phenomenal job, and I want to congratulate him. On Michael Gorski, the same thing. I think the man deserves it because he puts his heart and soul and the amount of work that goes into balancing the budget in this tough environment deserves I mean, in the corporate world, that would require to give some sort of a compensation increase. But I appreciate him not taking any of that. And good luck and thanks for your continued service to the district, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board member? I'd just like to chime in, and I certainly agree with Paul and Andy. Adam doing a great job. We appreciate everything that you have done and know there'll be even better things coming in the future from you. Michael, as board president, I've said this in the past, but as board president, I know how closely I have to work with the central administration. You don't know any time or any day that it's not good for you. You're always there. Whether I text you or call you, it doesn't matter if it's Saturday, Sunday, 10:30 at night, you're there and you're happy to answer my questions and go through things. And I know how hard you work, and the district is very fortunate to have you. Our audits are perfect every year. You're saving us a bundle of money, and you're worth what we're paying and then some. So thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, we can move now to the public forum. You could speak to on or off the agenda. You have 4 minutes. Please state your name and address. I'll ask you to please raise your hand there. And when you're through, lower your hand so we know we're finished. Mr. Washington, do we have anyone for the public forum?
Mr. Board President, we have C. Skirby.
Okay. Skirby, you there?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I did not lower my hand the last time. But just to give some quick comments, I think it's really sad that board members could care less about ethics violations if, pending and just simply voting to, renew contracts. Why not, right? I mean, it doesn't matter if, I don't know, you break the law possibly. Who cares, right? I mean, the things that you hear, the things that go on at these board meetings are just, it's shocking. It's shocking as a taxpayer. It's shocking as a parent. Nobody thinks that, tabling the vote was rejected because you don't want to know the information before you take a vote. That's irresponsible as a board member. And it's just shocking. And, however you want to put it, a raise is a raise. And if this is what this board wants to continue to doing in this economic climate, that's great. I mean, why not? Continue raising our taxes, continue increasing our fees in our schools. We have no plan now. We're putting on the back burner to address the student enrollment. Yeah, we're doing a fantastic job here. We're in a financial crisis in our school district. We don't know how we're gonna make our budget next year. Yeah, great job to our BA who's handling our finances. We're in perfect shape. I just want to commend the board for what you did here tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Walton, anyone else?
Mr. Ryback? The last speaker made a couple points that I feel I have to correct. I've tried to stay out of the political nonsense that I hope every reasonable taxpayer and viewer of this meeting can connect the dots where it's coming from. First of all, I have never broken the law ever in my life. If she can prove that, let her go to the police and make a charge of some kind of complaint. Nor do I have any ethics charges pending against me. I want to clarify both of those points, and they're very misleading. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other member of the public? Mr. Washington?
Mr. Board President, you have Prakash Parab.
Okay, Prakash?
Yeah, thank you. I learned where to raise the hand here. Thank you.
That's good.
It shows up here. Anyway, I have one question. So very good meeting today. So what is the bottom line? Are we going with plan B for further discussion?
Well, what we decided was, it seems to be the majority of the board, in fact, all the board was favoring Plan B. But because of the economic situation and because of the pandemic, we decided it wouldn't be wise to make a permanent referendum date, not a permanent, but to make
has left the meeting.
referendum date until the economy comes back and until the country becomes healthy again. We also, there were also some questions that came up that we needed to find out through the BG&T committee, and we decided this will give us time to do that. But so far, Plan B seems to be the plan.
Okay, thank you. I have another one. Thank you. So only thing is you all have to decide the date of referendum. Okay.
Yes, and get some more information. Yes.
Yeah, my request to, which is still we need some detail. If she can write whatever one page or whatever that presents 16 classes included for expansion in current plan is satisfactory enough for next 5 years or 6 years. You should give that explanation to us. Then I can support that with my voters. Otherwise, we have concerns about it. But she knows better than us what goes on in high school. So if she gives an explanation on that, that will be very helpful. So that is the request. Do you agree, Dr. Alvich?
Dr. Alvich, you want to answer that? Dr.
Sorry, I
Alvich?
was muted. I was muted. Yeah, I mean, we've been working with the high school administration to identify the best ways to do this. So, and looking at those 13 full-size classrooms and 3 small group instruction classrooms and how they would be able to affect the students. Yes, so we can definitely include that as we move forward and we better refine the plan.
Yeah, I'll appreciate if we can write up a little bit so we can satisfy the parents. Thank you. And the last one is, I know that what we are lobbying for, about last year or year before last, we passed a resolution on the impact fee on the builders. So we passed a resolution, but we didn't follow up. With another one, 2,800 houses coming up, residents in 4 years. Whatever this thing, I think we should have a letter campaign going on for the legislatures to find a way, impose impact fees or some other type of fees for the newcomers or the builders when they construct new constructions. So I think the advocacy group has to take, whenever the election comes, we talk about the impact fees. When the election is over, no one talks about it. So my request is advocacy team to draft a letter for imposing impact fees on the builders or alternate way of raising tax, revenue for the newcomers. Okay, so that is my request. Any questions on that?
No questions.
Okay, so please follow up. I really appreciate that. I don't want to hear again in November time, you guys talk, who are standing for elections, start talking about impact fees, and once they get elected, they forget it. I don't want to hear that.
Our time's up. Thank you. Thank you, Prakash. Mr. Washington, do we have anyone else?
Yes, Mr. Board President, we have Lawrence Liu.
Hi, I was listening on the meeting. I just wanted to say that I really appreciate all the work that Michael Gorski is putting in with our budget. I've been a resident of Monroe Township for about 10 years now, over 10 years actually, and I really like the fact that honestly, while our budget, our property taxes might seem high, they're actually comparatively pretty low, and actually they're one of the lowest in Middlesex County. So I think he's doing a great job. And frankly, I think that all of this small town politicking and basically hating on him just because for political reasons is detrimental to the well-being of our town. I think that we should be hiring an individual based on how great of a job they're doing. And I think that Michael Gorski is doing a great job.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks very much. Washington, anyone else?
Yes, Mr. Board President, we have Betty Sabarito.
Okay, Betty, welcome.
Hi, good evening. Betty Sabarito, 2 Barrymore Drive. I'm the leader of CPAG, the Special Education Parent Advisory Group, and maybe I missed it, Dr. Alvick or Dr. Lehman, in your reports, but I just wanted to say thank you and kudos because we put in a suggestion and it was something that you guys really took to heart. And we got an email, I believe, last Friday that the website, the district website now has the behavior analyst resource page for our parents. Actually, this is much better than just for special education because some general education students have behaviors as well. So this is a great list of resources. So I really wanted to thank you. I wanted to thank you for working so closely with CPAG this year. And Dr. Lehman, the fact that you are continuing without any change to your contract speaks volumes. So I just wanted to say thank you to both of you.
Thank you.
Mr. Board President, I see no more new hands.
Okay, not seeing anyone, we can close the public forum and we can move to closed session.
Mr. Ryback?
Yes, did I miss
We
something?
do not have anybody here for closed session. That both parents have emailed me and said that they would like to reschedule.
Okay, I guess that's not a problem. Well then, I don't think I'll have any objections from the board. Our next scheduled Board of Education meeting, I'm assuming it'll be virtual again, will be June 10th. And I make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I would make a second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Job well done, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Ryback.
Oh,
Andy did.
I
Andy,
think Joel I think Joel-
I made the motion to adjourn.
I tried to second it, but I think somebody jumped ahead of me.
Yeah, I did, but it doesn't matter. Put a name down.
I think everyone seconded that motion.
Yeah, right.
I say that, Michelle. I think
Minutes
we
reflect
all did
Mr.
that.
No, Pat?
Marietta Ruella
Thank you.
has left the meeting.
She seconded. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.